Hello, guys. Welcome to the PulsarFire Paddock podcast. It has been a minute. Yeah, I've been a pleb, been moving home. Unfortunately, starved everyone of John's presence. I do apologise. um,
No
but,
one is asking you to apologise for that.
well, okay. Apology rescinded. It's fine. um, yeah, it's been a while. Been away, moving home. You've had real world stuff going on. It's just been a busy period. However, we're back and we're playing catch up. And we left off. What did we leave off after? Hungary was the last time we had the podcast. That was
No,
before
we did
Zandvoort.
start, didn't we?
Oh, we did Spa. Of course, we did Spa. Yes, and then we had yes, Zandvoort, which was due to be done. However, everything kind of happened. But here we are. Here we are to talk about it, and there isn't really too much to say about Zandvoort. It was pretty much a bore fest, in my opinion. Anyway, there's a few little highlights in there. A few.
I, I was generally I was pleased to be on point with my predictions, which is because it was the first time we'd run there. I said
Mm.
we'd see some medium-sized, some fairly big accidents in practice with people pushing and getting used to the camber,
And we
and
did.
we did.
We
There
did.
was a fair few accidents in practice.
Mm.
And then the last big accident I remember during the qualifying would have been George Russell binning it in the penultimate turn because
Yes.
he just got that tiny bit too greedy on the curb and the
Yep.
back got away from him. And he was
Yes.
incredibly lucky because he stuck it in the wall,
Hmm.
drove it out as if it was nothing. And
Yep.
then after the red flag, Latifi did something similar a
Yes.
bit earlier in the track, and
Yes, he
that
did.
was qualifying done.
Yeah, that was a huge one from Latifi. That was yeah, not a good day for the Williams boys. Pretty costly for them as well, considering in what is it now? So if we're talking present day, George Russell scored points in 3 out of the last 4 races, which is
Yeah.
remarkable. I wouldn't have wrote that at the beginning of the season, but there you go. But yeah, some big ones. Sainz, he binned his Ferrari in the
Yeah.
early turn. He went
That
round.
was free practice three, wasn't it?
To be honest, even the most one of the most experienced drivers on the grid, Seb Vettel, he was spinning all over the place as well.
Mm.
It was a difficult track to get used to, but once they sort of figured out
Yeah.
that wider line through that sort of banked, I can't think what the turn number is. Turn three, turn four
Oh, I'm not
on
good with turn
to
numbers.
about turn three. The left hand bank before you go
Oh,
down the back.
yes,
Yeah.
because for those who don't know us, Steve and I are gamers and we like our sim racing, and we've
Oh,
done
we
this
do.
a number of times in ACC, Assetto Corsa
Yes.
Competizione,
Yes,
and
we have.
historically, we and everyone else we've raced with has always taken that inside line. It
Mm.
hadn't necessarily occurred to me that, and the professional driver spotted it early on, that outside line
Yeah.
actually gave more grip and banked you through the corner, which was
Mm.
it was really interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've got to remember as though with ACC, it's the older variant of the track. They're updating that at the moment, which will be quite good when that comes through. For
Mm.
any sim racer fans out there, I tried the wider line on F1 2021.
Oh yeah, how did it go?
Hmm. No,
Not good.
no. It seems Codemasters haven't programmed any grip out there because they've predicted when they created the track, the normal racing line, you come into the tighter apex and away you go. Yeah, that needs editing already.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it yeah. It was. Do you know? Zandvoort is one of those tracks that I think is better to drive than it is to watch. That it's just, I don't think it's really got the space for the F1 cars to proper side by. Well, then this year's aero though. Mm.
Mm.
Uh,
Well, I know what you mean. I was worried going into the race that it wasn't going to be an overtake fest because I don't
yeah.
think there's any great natural overtaking spaces, and
Mm.
that's just that typical problem of any track that has fast flowing corners. In reality, what you need is those heavy braking areas. And that's where
Hmm.
you'll get people. You need long straights for slipstream or DRS in the modern age, and you need heavy braking areas for people
Mm.
like Danny Rick to be braver on the brakes than anyone else.
Yep.
Zandvoort, there's a couple of heavy braking areas, but even turn one, actually they were taking that probably in third gear. I mean, that was
Yeah, it
quite a fast
was.
corner, faster than I'd expected them to take it.
Yeah, it's quite surprising actually, to be honest, because the older layout of Zandvoort, it was a bit tighter. It wasn't quite as it is now with the redeveloped pit exit for the F1.
Mm.
So has it taken away a little bit of that? Possibly, yeah. But Zandvoort's always a legendary track. It always will be. It's got a lot of history, and I am glad we've gone back to to Holland and the Netherlands and all that kind of stuff, because Max Fever was a massive thing, and that's done a lot for the sport over there. But yeah, the race just kind of left me. It just left me wanting a bit more. Alonso had a good race. He played some catch up with some good people. Made some decent progress particularly into turn one. It was his favourite spot to sort of dart past people.
Around the outside as well.
It was, yeah. Cracking effort, to be honest. But Alonso's a wily old dog, so he's not afraid to sort of push the limits when needs be.
Agreed. I'm going to dive in here and say, because anyone who's listened to our podcast or watched our video cast on YouTube will probably have had a fairly firm impression that I'm not a Max Verstappen fan. Truth be told, I very much was. I'm starting to take a dislike to him for reasons that we'll come on to again later in this podcast, I'm sure. But credit where credit's due. It was a typical Lewis Hamilton, Seb Vettel, Michael Schumacher job where he basically led from start to finish.
Yeah.
And because of that, no one would consider him for driver of the day because he wasn't dicing and in the action and being exciting on TV. But he controlled the race from start to finish. Lewis kept him honest for as long as he possibly could. But Max did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the race, Max lapped everyone up to fourth place in the end. Finished 20.9 seconds ahead of Hamilton and 56 seconds ahead of bloody Bottas in third. He was in a league of his own. Mercedes were nowhere compared to the Red Bull. Well, the Red Bull of Verstappen, because Perez has been struggling lately. A bit worrying because I like Checo. I think he's a good lad. But
he's just having a bit of a bad run of it.
He is.
Red Bull have a nasty habit of pulling the trigger too early with their number two drivers, and they absolutely should not do that because Sergio will do them a very good turn.
Well, I mean, he's already proved a steadier hand than other drivers in that same seat this season.
Race winner already. He's been at the sharp end, a few times. He's been there or thereabouts. Largely been more consistent than Bottas in the sister Mercedes this season. Bottas has been all over the place, although he seems a bit less stressed now with everything that we're going to discuss in regards to the driver market. Now, there is something I want to talk about with Bottas, and because it's been so long, I can't remember if it was here or Monza, but I am fairly sure it was here. In fact, no, I'm 99% certain it was here. Bottas went for the fastest lap and was told to abandon it by James, try to slow down in sector 3, and yet still put in the fastest lap of the race, and they then had to react and pit Lewis to give him an opportunity at the fastest lap.
That was Monza. That was Monza.
Was it?
Yeah, it was.
Are you
Monza.
sure?
Yeah, I'm sure that was Monza.
The reason I'm 99% certain is because it wasn't Monza because Lewis didn't finish Monza.
No, of course. Yes, it was. It was Zandvoort. Yes. Oh, yeah,
I remember the memes coming out afterwards and the radio messages of "Fuck you, James," and all the dubbed radio messages coming over.
Beautiful.
Zandvoort.
Beautiful. I love the meme community. They always produce the gold.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, Bottas. I mean, he has absolute flashes of just incredible pace, but his consistency is fucking awful at the moment. And I hope that improves when he goes to be a team leader, because when he's a team leader, he's going to get a bit more of that sort of support around him, and it's kind of largely his team. Obviously, we'll come to all the driver moves because there's been some chops and changes and some ones that we just knew were always going to hang around like a bad smell. The only other notable mention I can say about Zandvoort really was Pierre Gasly in P4. Great display from him in the AlphaTauri.
He's sort of the unsung hero in many respects.
He really is.
Cracking performances in the same way George was Mr. P11.
he was Mr. P4 for the longest time, but because he wasn't on the podium, he was just getting solid points. We never really thought a great deal of it. It just kind of, it's Pierre doing what he does.
Yeah, that's it. He just gets on with it, you know.
Yeah, he does.
Fair
He
enough
puts in
to the lad.
a solid performance, and I think there's been lots of conversations already about him being overlooked for that Red Bull seat. And actually, I've got to be honest, I think he's better off staying at AlphaTauri than he is getting to Red Bull. It's sort of, I like a good metaphor or analogy. For anyone out there that's a football fan, it's the old Matthew Letitia thing. I'd rather be a big fish in a small pond than a little fish in a small pond. And that all goes back to Matthew Letitia was obviously an absolute superstar at Southampton, and Manchester United, when they were the biggest team in the country, were touting him, and he went, "I don't want to go. I'm perfectly happy where I am at Southampton." And I think that's sort of where Pierre Gasly will be. We've already seen him in a Red Bull not perform.
Yeah.
And I do maintain, I think the Red Bull is a car that's designed on a knife edge. I think that's why so many drivers struggle with it.
And this is what I was going to come to. So there was an interview done with Christian Horner. I was listening to the Friday practice of this weekend's Russian Grand Prix. Crofty and I can't think who he was talking to in the commentary box. I think it was Johnny Herbert. Little old Johnny popped up into the box. I love Johnny. He is just he's a lad. I think he's brilliant. And they're having this really good conversation about Red Bull and the car, and it was quite an interesting one because they'd been having a chat apparently with Christian Horner and talking about Checo in the sister car, and Christian for the first time actually turned around and he said do you know what, he said, we are on our third driver in as many years pretty much, because they've had Gasly, Albon, now Checo, and they said it's become increasingly clear to us that our car is very much geared towards one driver's driving style. And he said, and that's on us. That is on us. That issue is on us. He said, so hopefully, he said, what we need to be able to do is make a car that's drivable by both drivers at the absolute limit for going forwards. And I hope, for obviously new regulations, I hope that is a reality next season, so we can really see what Checo can do in an Adrian Newey car with a team that's proven front runners. I want to see this. Because obviously the last big team he drove for was McLaren for one season, and that was too early in his career, and it was just as McLaren were going downhill. So I hope we're going to see that. I hope that's going to be a thing, because I think he will achieve great things given the right machinery. Probably not a world champion, but definitely more race wins, podiums. He'll be there to pick up the pieces when other people fall by the wayside. At least he'll be a solid number 2 to Verstappen, which Red Bull have been lacking for all this time, which we've said day in day out.
Yeah, absolutely. And a solid number 2 can step up. I was just reminiscing about Michael Schumacher having his nasty accident at Silverstone all those years ago, when suddenly Eddie Irvine was their only hope for a driver's champion, so the number 2 became the number 1. And obviously Rubens Barrichello, for all his number 2 positions and famously backing off at the line at Austria and what have you, he won a number of races and was a contender for so many years. But I think you're absolutely right. I think we shouldn't underestimate the challenge about a driver stepping into a new car. We've seen this time and time again. Even if you go back to some of the greats, Ayrton Senna, triple world champion, drove the wheels off that McLaren, was unstoppable. Moved to Williams, which in theory was the best car in the field, had won the last 2 years bounce to bounce. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't so much that he was struggling for pace, because he was still qualifying first or second. He was still running third or fourth in the race. But he was struggling with the balance of the car. He spun it at Interlagos in a place where you never would have expected him to lose it. He had, silly little mistakes and errors that were very uncharacteristic for someone with his experience and his impeccable car control. But, we could argue about this particular thing for days and days and days, because this is the difference between the driver being fully in control or the electronic aids being fully in control. And that was the age where the electronic aids were taking over. But, any driver coming into a car for the first time takes time to adjust. Nico Rosberg looked a better driver in the Mercedes than Lewis Hamilton did in their first season together for many races.
Yeah, they did. And that, well, Nico had been there though, hadn't he, since 2010? So
yeah,
yeah, if you're in a team, in a car, whatever, you're going to have that inside knowledge. You're going to have that seat time, which is a massive thing. I mean, speaking of seat time, so case in point, I don't know if you're aware of the YouTuber Super GT.
I've seen a couple of his videos, not an avid viewer, but I've watched a couple.
Yeah, so he's been, because obviously he's part of Lando Norris's Quadrant project that they've set up. It's basically a load of F1 content creators and racing content creators that are part of this umbrella thing called Quadrant. It's Lando Norris's. He owns it. He runs it. He backed this chap, Steve Brown. Well, Steve Alvarez Brown, I should call him, is by his full name. Or just Super GT. He's been backed to race in the UKC, so basically the top tier of UK karting. He's basically been backed to do it because he used to kart younger but couldn't afford to continue doing the racing, so became a content creator, as you do. Lando's backed him, put him in the thing. He's gone back to it, and he's on a grid of 20 races, and he's got budget to pay for the season, pay for the kart, and go to the races. What he hasn't got is budget to do all of the testing days and get the seat time.
Yeah.
And it's shown because in his races, this is just go-karts, so everyone's in the same fucking spec go-kart. Everyone's in the same thing, they're all the same spec.
Yeah.
And he's out there and he's just getting swamped, and he's finishing 18th, 17th out of 20, way off the pace. And he himself, in his videos, has documented going around talking to the other drivers. And the other drivers are like, they're banging in about 3 or 4 days worth of just practice days every week. Whereas he's getting 1 test day a month outside of the races. And they're saying, look, if you want to be at the sharp end of karting or any motorsport, seat time is what will get you there. And if you haven't got the budget for that, or if you're limited on testing like F1 is, where are you going to get that seat time? That's the thing. So it's going to take time, because Verstappen's been in that Red Bull car now for, I can't think how many years. 4 years now, something like that. Something ridiculous. 4 years.
Might be longer.
Might be. Yeah, it might be longer. Might be even 5 years.
Well, he was 16 when he joined F1. He's 23 now, and I don't think it was long before he made it to Red Bull. Let's have a quick look.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is his 6th season in that Red Bull seat.
So there you go. And Perez comes from a completely different car to being in that. He needs the seat time to be at the sharp end, and with no in-season testing, which I still think is a shame, because I used to love going down to Silverstone and seeing the old in-season test. Pay 15 quid on the gate, get in, go watch the cars go round. Okay, there was only the standing areas open, because grandstands are all locked up, but it was always good fun to sort of just go down, just watch them test all day. But obviously we're in a different age, different era now. But yeah, I still rate Checo. On his day, he's still one of the fastest drivers on the grid, like you say, Barrichello. Steady Eddie, and that man.
Eddie's got the lifestyle that I absolutely love for a Formula One driver. I mean, he was a good-looking man, but he was a playboy with it.
Yeah.
And you see him now as a retired F1 driver on his yacht, sipping champagne with women all around him. Someone's fetching him another whiskey, and he's just like, yeah, loving life. Thanks very much, lads.
And I love it. And he's still as outspoken as ever as well. And I love it. I love it because he just doesn't care. Like, he's got something on his mind. He's going to say it, and he's going to let everyone know his opinion, whether you want to hear it or not.
Why should he care? He's Eddie Irvine. He can do what he wants.
Exactly. I mean, he's the most successful Irishman, I think, to have raced in Formula One, I want to say.
I would have said so. I can't necessarily think of any Irish F1 drivers off the top of my head besides Eddie.
No, I mean, I'm sure there's been a few.
Here we go. So you've got Joe Kelly, who did 1 year. You've got Derek Daly, who did 4 years.
Derek Daly, yeah.
David Kennedy, Tommy Byrne, and Ralph Furman.
Oh, God, Ralph Furman. Oh. Do you know that guy, Ralph Furman? I for whatever fucking reason, I googled him the other day, and he's not involved really in motorsports at all anymore. He's completely sort of moved himself away from that. It's an interesting transition. Interesting transition.
So just very interestingly, sorry, before we move on from this, Eddie Irvine doesn't appear in that list. And I've had a moment of panic of, hang on, have we got it wrong? Is he not Irish?
He's
No,
Northern Irish, isn't he?
Of course he's Irish. So he lists his nationality as British.
Oh, okay.
So he is indeed, he's County Down, he's Northern Ireland, but his nationality, because of that, comes under British.
There you go then. Wow. Oh, well. I mean, yeah.
I wonder how Eddie feels about that, because I always thought he was really proud of his Irish roots.
Well, that's what I thought, because on his helmet he even had like the clover and everything on it. So, I mean, that's an interesting one.
And you know, well, hang on, I've got to check now. Did Jackie Stewart appear as British, or did he appear as Scottish? Jackie Stewart. Yes, it comes up. British racing driver.
And I'm assuming then DC would be the same.
Yeah. Yeah, so DC does. I remember. How interesting. I almost think that's a bit of a shame. I mean, I know they're part of the wider Great Britain or United Kingdom or what have you, but, you know, Jackie Stewart used to walk around in his tartan flat caps. He had tartan all down the side of the Stewart racing car when that was a thing.
But don't forget his tartan trousers. Fucking hell.
Oh, God. Yeah, I think that's a shame. I would have preferred to have seen them actually race for their own nationality rather than let the politics get in the way. Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland, whatever it might be. Okay.
Well, I'm guessing that's all done for motorsport licensing reasons.
Or even as simple as national anthems. I couldn't honestly tell you if Scotland or Northern Ireland have their own unique national anthem.
So, okay, let's forget Zandvoort. I think Zandvoort's.
Can I say one thing before we move on from Zandvoort?
Go on.
The Haas boys had fun.
Do you know what? It's another episode of Gunther losing his shit in the office. I love it. I can't wait for Netflix's Drive to Survive. Yeah.
It was pathetic. It was absolute school ground shit. Now, so Nikita Mazepin claimed the qualifying issue was because it was his turn to run first on the road and Mick was in front of him.
Get over yourself. All right. Yeah, fine, fair.
Maybe that was the cause of it. Either suck it up and talk about it in the team debrief, or drive fast enough that your teammate doesn't feel the need to overtake you bellend. But to then cause what was very nearly a significant and severe 3-card pile-up with Sebastian Vettel before starting your flying lap is unforgivable. And then during the race...
Oh boy!
Race as hard as you want, but I remember seeing it was Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello when Schumacher was back in the Mercedes. Barrichello must have been in the
Williams.
Was he in the Williams?
Yeah.
You know exactly what
Budapest
I'm talking about. At Hungary, where he pushed him all the way to the wall, over the white line, and nearly off the track. It was unbelievable, and Schumi, rightly so, got a penalty and did hold his hands up for it.
Yeah, he did.
But that was exactly Mazepin did what I felt was very, very similar to Mick and really pushed him as hard as he could. And you don't do that with your teammate. You know, rule 1, don't take your teammate out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Gunther, like, obviously, he had some things to say, as he always does. But, you know, like Mick, that's not the first incident between these two. And it's not been the last. And it's not going to be the last. Because, obviously... There's other news that means that this is going to continue. Oh, great. Can't wait. But like Mick was saying that obviously Nikita now is overdriving the car in pure just determination that I will be faster than Mick in at least one session or one race. That is not the fucking right attitude to be having. Right now... You should be just focusing on learning the car, learning F1, and just trying to help the team develop. At the moment, this season's a write-off. We know this season's a write-off. You know, Haas said much. They said right from the beginning of the season, we're not bringing updates to the car. We're focusing all of our efforts on next year because they've got that chap from Ferrari who's now heading up their design office, which is amazing. You know, they've got all the things Not well, in the right place there or thereabouts. I still don't believe in this customer ethos for the chassis. I think that should still be an in-house thing. But obviously, Haas don't have the facilities for that. So, but
it's the right thing to do. They should abandon this year's car and focus on next year for the rule change. I would do the same.
Yeah, I would have done exactly the same as well. And you know what? For the last, I know Williams have really picked up in recent days, like with certain results, profiteering on weather for one, and other people's mistakes. But I haven't seen any upgrades brought to their car. They are just plodding on as well with what they've got and just get into next season because that's where they're at. Obviously, Mercedes had said the same. However, I did see that they started bringing updates to the car again. Oh, panicking because of Red Bull, this. But, Mick was quite right in voicing that, Nikita shouldn't be doing that, and... God forbid, because obviously we know how Gunther is when he loses his temper. I would not want to be the driver causing the issue to be brought in the office. But is anything really going to happen to Nikita Mazepin with Daddy Billionaire sitting in his back pocket? No. That much has been proven with obviously his off-track behaviour. And we've already seen his defensive... It amazes me because this defensive manoeuvre was almost a carbon copy of one that he pulled on his own teammate back in Formula 2. He did a very similar one where he just drove across him. And I was like, what the fuck is this guy doing? He's very unaware of his surroundings. And... he's just bone idle. He's a stubborn fucker. He's just like, no, you're not coming past, and I'll do anything I can do to not let you go past.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a bigger event happen because I don't think enough has happened internally in that team to say this shit needs to fucking stop. It's going to happen again, and unfortunately, I think... for the time being, Mick is in Nikita's firing line, and it's going to be like that going on. As we go forwards,
the only advantage is, from what I've seen of races to come, and I know we'll talk about Monza probably in a second, and there was contact again there.
Yep.
But there are, generally speaking, only 2 or 3 periods when Mick is in Nikita's firing line, which is the start of the race, first pit stop, and second pit stop. Because outside of that, he's generally quick enough to get the fuck away from him.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. Nikita doesn't have any racecraft. He doesn't have any pace. He is purely there because of Dad's money. When was the last time Mazepin actually won a title, if at all? Nothing's coming to the top of my head.
Oh, well, hang on. I have Google open.
I think it's worth noting.
So he was second place in the GP3 series in 2018. He was third placed in the F3 Asian Championship 2019-20, and those are his 2 best finishes to date.
Wow. And yet we're then losing younger drivers such as Callum Ilott, who has just basically he's abandoned F1 now to go full time over in the States next year. I personally think that's a huge loss to F1 because he was one of the most exciting talents coming up in the junior categories, and now he's gone. And it's so hard for drivers to transition from the States to F1. We don't usually see it happen, and usually once you've gone stateside, you generally stay there.
Yeah, there's very few drivers who've made that transition at all, and fewer still that have made the transition there and then back. The only 2 that come to mind would be Mansell, who obviously famously went to IndyCar for 93, was then the only person in the world to be the reigning F1 champion and IndyCar champion at the same time, and then came back for 94 for a few races. And of course, Fernando. But Fernando's only done that because he wanted the Indy 500 crown to be the triple crown.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't think many people do make that switch at all. I think it's the right thing for Callum to do. We discussed this through text message. I think it's the right thing to do because his career would go stale otherwise.
Yeah. Because what's he going to do? Just languishing around? Yeah, it is a shame. Because all he's going to do is languish around in Formula 2. And to be honest... that's not a pinnacle series at all. It's a feeder series. We know it's a feeder series. That's its sole purpose. Whereas at least if he goes to the United States, he's in their premier class of single seater racing. You know, admittedly, it's probably not on the levels of, you know, NASCAR in the States still somehow, but it does have the Indy 500, which will be, you know, obviously something for him to have a go at. Yeah, it's a shame, and I think though we're at risk of other young drivers with similar talent levels going the same way, because we've got a good crop of youngsters, but then when we look at the driver market this year, it, you know, there's one seat
now, isn't it?
Yeah, there's one seat available,
which is Gio's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you know, with his performances as well in the races lately, I don't think he's going to be staying on.
Yeah, he's had a number of wobbles since Spa. He had a few nasty ones at Spa, and you know, again, we're skipping ahead a bit, but he's had a couple of nasty offs in Sochi this weekend qualifying.
Yes,
you know, he backed it into the barriers and took his rear wing off in practice 3, and then in qualifying he was broadside across the track, blocking Charles Leclerc. So he's getting a bit tetchy and a bit nervous, and he was slow today as well.
Yeah, he was very slow. I think his time is done now. Like, he had a couple of stand-up qualifying performances, which was like, whoa, where the fuck's he suddenly pulled this? You know, where's he pulled this pace from? This is amazing. And then gets to race day, and then, like, okay, one of them wasn't really his fault because someone chopped across his nose and he had to go and take a nose cone at Zandvoort. But Monza was completely his own doing. So, you know, yeah. I mean, we'll go through the drivers list. I do have it open as to who's confirmed where and what. So, you know, we'll go through that as and when. Shall we jump forwards to Monza? Shall we come to Monza?
I think so.
Do you know what? It was another Monza special, really. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it.
It was a good race.
It was a good race. And the McLaren dream at last. At fucking last. Those boys have been like, they've been so close. They've been sort of there nipping away. When other people have fallen by the wayside, they've been sort of sniffing around with podiums and, you know, Lando looking pretty sharp. But do you know what? I didn't expect it to be that man, Danny Ricciardo, to take the victory. But my God,
neither did I.
He drove as if it was proper Danny Rick back to the Red Bull days. It just, and he was saying himself, it all just came flooding back. He was in front. He was. I don't know if you heard some of his stuff, but the team was saying in some of their stuff, he was literally driving around the racetrack and he was just humming and singing songs to himself in his helmet. He was in his zone and he was driving like an absolute champ. And
you can often tell with Danny Rick, because he can, not always, he's had moments, particularly over this season, but he's generally very calm behind the wheel. I vividly remember when he was at Renault, him getting that radio message. Okay, Danny, we need you to increase the pace, please. Okay, how much faster do you need me to go? I need another half a second a lap. Okay, on it. And he just went.
Yeah.
And then he had, was it Azerbaijan? He did something and he lost the team some time. And he was like, don't worry, lads, I'll make it up. And he did. You know, we've always said this. He's a brilliant driver who's been underperforming in that car. Similar to what we were just saying earlier, new driver in the new car, got to get time to get used to it. He's starting to find his feet a little bit. And I was made up for him to get a P1. And testament to what a man, what a gentleman, and what a grown-up Lando is. How excited was Lando for him to win that race?
I know. Do you know what, Lando? Let's just talk about Lando. What a fucking season he's having, for one. He's coming into his own. You know, it's that critical season 3. You know, this is the time in your career when you make it to your 3rd season. There's nothing to hide behind anymore. You are now a legit F1 driver. There's no more excuses, and he's just, like you say, he's so mature with everything he does, and I just love how you know, when Sainz pulled out some great results, he was excited and happy for them. And then Danny Rick pulls out this result and he's excited and happy. He's just fucking loving life. And I love to see it because we've had too many placid drivers come through F1 in recent years. And now we've actually got quite a likeable, cheeky chap who... I don't know if you saw the Twitter where he fucking posted up on Danny Rick's Twitter account because Danny Rick left his phone laying around.
Oh, rookie error.
I just like, what are you doing? You can't do that with Lando because Lando's going to make you pay for that, man. Like, yeah. And sure enough, he did. But it was great.
He's brilliant. He's a cheeky chappy. I was watching the video earlier of him elbowing Alex Albon into Danny Rick as they were, you know, he's just a funny lad. But I was just having a quick look actually at the current standings. Season's not over. Plenty of racing left to be done. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, for the last 5 or 6 years, there's going to be 2 teams at the top, and then you've got the best of the rest. And that would have either been Mercedes and Ferrari or Mercedes and Red Bull. That's just the way it's been.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that would mean your best of the rest starts at 5th place.
Yeah.
Lando Norris currently sitting 4th place in the championship and only 9 points off the back of Valtteri Bottas.
Hello.
It's incredible.
It tell you what, then this again goes to show consistency. You know, Lando has just been hitting his stride this season. He's had a little wobble at a couple of tracks, but by and large, he's just been a safe pair of hands. You know that when he's behind that wheel, he will get the maximum out of that car for that particular track and that race. You know, and if the opportunity is there to sniff a podium, he's seized it. He's done it. You know, he's taken full grip of that. I am absolutely buzzing for the lad, and I still maintain this lad, if whether it is with McLaren or whether in time things change and he moves on, he will be a world champion. I think him, George, Charles Leclerc, they're your big 3 with Verstappen. Well, obviously Verstappen's about the same age as well. Keep on forgetting that shit.
Yeah, he ain't going anywhere yet.
But you've got 4 fucking fantastic drivers there who are each more than capable of racing each other's to the fucking 8th degree. I am excited to see this take shape.
I agree, and I think I'd add Carlos Sainz into that list as well.
Do you know what? Underrated, isn't he? Really, Carlos.
He is.
Yeah,
you know, he's been matching Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. He's been putting in some great performances. The only thing that worries me a little bit, and this is, you know, no slight to Lando Norris at all. I see a future where Lando and George are going toe-to-toe for victories.
Oh, God.
And I worry if we're going to have a bit of a Lewis Hamilton, Nico Rosberg type situation, because they're obviously great mates. They've come up through the categories together. And how will they both react when a world championship is on the line and they're the 2 men in the frame for it? And I think that's a very realistic future.
Yeah,
particularly if Lewis does think about stepping down and retiring in the next 2, 3, 4 years. These feel like the people that will be leading the charge at the sharp end.
Yeah. No, I agree. I would hope, just by how they've been, I would hope that their maturity, you know, still holds strong and, you know, they deal with it. But, you know, in heat of battle, these things happen. It's a very realistic possibility. To be honest, though, would I really be complaining if I'm seeing these guys, the absolute Titanic drivers, going wheel to wheel and just fucking giving us the racing that we want? It would certainly divide fan bases. That's for fucking sure. You know,
it would.
But that's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make. But Science is a good shout. Who else? Who else had a good race? I tell you what, who had a surprisingly decent race finish at Monza. It doesn't look spectacular on paper, but P7 for Lance Stroll. I don't know, where did he suddenly sneak that from? The crafty little shit.
Yeah, he does this from time to time, doesn't he? And sort of sneaks in.
Just pops up, and you're just like, oh, Lance, yeah. Forgot about you.
Yeah, I remember the same. It must have been the Turkish Grand Prix last year when him and Sergio were leading for the longest time, and then they both fell away.
Yeah, Stroll pops up, takes pole position. Like, sorry, what?
There was a risk for a while. He was going to take pole today at Sochi, but that's a conversation for later.
Yes.
God. It was a decent one from Lance. I think part of the reason he was the lead driver in the Aston Martin was because Seb didn't have the greatest of races.
No.
I can't remember it. He pitted really early and then ended up pitting again later, and there were some issues for Seb during that race.
Yeah.
But let's not take it away from him. P7's a strong result for Lance Stroll.
Yeah, it is. It's a good result, to be honest. Obviously, another striking result. George picking up another 2 points in ninth. I mean, he certainly seizes the opportunities when they arise, and
he does. But I think Williams have started to turn a corner somewhere in their development, because Latifi was up there as well. Latifi
he was P11. Yeah, P11 again. Latifi's being consistent. He is a paid driver. Let's not forget that. But he's certainly not. He's certainly a world above the pay driver level of Nikita Mazepin, which is always a good thing. You don't want to be a Nikita Mazepin. No one wants to be that. What did surprise?
On this podcast,
no, not at all. Well, I tell you what did make me laugh is obviously with the Kimi Räikkönen contracting COVID and being away for 2 races. Was Robert Kubica standing in, and I love Robert. I've got a lot of time for Mr. Kubica. It was so nice to actually see him jump in the car and be ahead of the Haas drivers straight away. Just jumping in the car, no seat time. I'll just jump in the car. I'll outqualify the Haas drivers. Fuck them, And for large parts of Monza, he was on the pace of Gio.
Just looking actually at the final race order, he actually only finished 2.5 seconds behind Gio on the track after 53 laps. He wasn't lapped.
No.
Fair play.
Yeah, fair play. Obviously, the safety car at some point saved Gio, because Gio had obviously binned it early on.
Yes.
Without that, Robert probably would have been ahead of him, I reckon. But yeah, I mean, Kubica's done a commendable job, in my opinion, because he showed some decent pace at a tricky technical track like Zandvoort, and then comes to Monza and is again there or thereabouts for where the car should be. He's been a good stand-in. Is that probably going to be his last Grand Prix start? Probably. But it was nice to see him there.
I've got a lot of time for Robert Kubica. I actually watched him a little while ago on someone's YouTube channel. I can't remember who the guy was. It's not someone I subscribed to. I must have just found it by accident. And this guy had turned up. He used to take cars to Nürburgring and race this, that, and the other. Robert just turned up and was like, I'd love to understand what you do, what's going on. Can I jump in the car with you, do a couple of laps? I'll maybe take you round as well. And he just showed what a down-to-earth, nice human being he was.
Yeah.
It was... He's a real loss from Formula One, and it's just one of those dumb luck things with the accident he had in the rally car that damaged his hand, and that tight cockpit and the way you have to grip the wheel. It's just not going to work out for him.
No.
The fact that he even made it back at all for that full-time drive a few years ago is testament to the man.
And
it's a shame, because he was destined to be a world champion.
Yeah, he was. And let's not forget, obviously, he was scheduled at the end of the year he had his accident. He was going to be becoming a fucking Ferrari driver. It's a huge shame we were robbed of his best years. But
it's amazing. Have you ever seen his rally accident?
I have.
Because it looks horrific.
Yeah.
But in comparison, when you remember Robert Kubica crashed his car at Canada in one of the biggest Formula One accidents I've seen in recent time, and he walked away from that going, "Whew, that was nasty." And then it was the rally accident that ended his career almost. It's ridiculous.
I know, it's such a shame. But he is the LMP2 champion.
Yeah,
I tell you what, he's had such a weird year this year, because he went from obviously he's reserve driver role, to all of a sudden jumping back in an F1 car for a couple of races, to then going straight from that to the World Endurance Championship and winning the title there. I mean, he's like just shot up on an upward trajectory again. But fair play to the lad. I've got a lot of time for him. It was good to see him back in the F1 paddock.
Yeah,
he'll probably stay on, I would imagine, as a reserve. I imagine he'll be kept around because he seems to be there doing something.
I'd like to think so because even if he doesn't have the dexterity in his hand to be able to compete and do what he needs to do, his expertise, his experience, his qualities are enough that would add significant value to any team on the paddock from their development point of view. I'd really like him to stick around for a long time to come.
Yeah, no, I hope he is a fixture in that paddock for a while to come. Obviously, we're talking about Monza. A couple of incidents. Obviously, we've already mentioned the Haas drivers. They had another little biff, didn't they, in the chicane? Nikita and Mick.
Yeah, just coming out of Curva Grande and into the chicane. Nikita stuck his wheel up and took out Mick. I mean, it was just a ridiculous, foolhardy move. He must have known that was never going to stick. I don't even know what he was thinking.
Do you know what, though? With how he drives and what he does, it wouldn't surprise me, though, if he's just completely unaware. He's just like, I'm going to stick it up here.
So that's interesting. I thought you were going to say something different, and I was about to agree with you. I thought you were going to say it wouldn't surprise me if he did it on purpose.
There is that. And I didn't want to go down that route, but you've gone down that route. Yes. Yeah. With how petty and petulant this lad is, do you know what? I wouldn't put it past him.
I have no problem opening any of these cans of worms, mate. I'll open them all. But no, I wouldn't be surprised if it was on purpose. Just from Nikita, in his mind, trying to put Mick in his place and sort of, reminder, this is my team. I'm here as well. Don't get too big for your boots.
Yeah, I'm bankrolling this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which is why I was really hoping Mick was going to make the move to Alpha and take GOC to whatever it was. Yeah. But it looks like in the last days they have officially confirmed the same driver lineup for next year.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, again, it's just more stupidity. I mean, thankfully, though, Nikita rued that decision because he ended up retiring from the race. So, fucking good. That's 2 DNFs in a row now for Nikita. You keep on going, mate. Keep on going like that because I really just can't stand the guy, to be honest.
No, I can't either.
No. Another driver that I think has really gone off piste, off boil. Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah, he showed some real flashes at the beginning of the season. I was really excited for him, partially because I don't think Japan have had a real leading driver for a long time. They've had a lot of also-rans, but no one that's ever come near. And he looked really exciting. Ironically, I'm just looking at his results. We're saying he went off the boil a little bit. He did score points in Silverstone, and he did score points in Hungary. But yeah, Belgium, he was nowhere. France before that, he was nowhere. Monaco, he was nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. I again, because this is AlphaTauri and not Red Bull, I'm hoping they'll give him another season to find his feet, because I think he deserves it. Well, they will.
Well, yeah, he obviously is signed to continue next season.
We know what people are like these days, particularly in the Red Bull paddock, about cutting people halfway through.
I'm just saying, in Formula One, a contract means fuck all. It's irrelevant, really. The amount of drivers we've seen chopped and changed over the years, a contract means very, very little in F1.
No.
But he just, those flashes of pace, yet again, sticking true to that kind of the drivers from Japan, because Kobayashi showed moments of brilliance.
He did.
Takuma Sato had moments of brilliance. And then who the hell was before that? Teranazuki Takagi had no moments of brilliance.
Hang on, who was your favourite?
What, my favourite Japanese driver?
Yeah, the guy who did nothing.
Oh, Teranazuki Takagi?
Was it Takagi? That wasn't the name I was thinking of. I'm sure there was another one.
Yeah, Katayama.
I see. I loved.
I love
Katayama.
Katayama. Yeah.
For the Tyrrell.
Taki Inoue. I love Taki Inoue.
Aguri Suzuki.
Oh, Aguri Suzuki. What a legend.
No, Yuji Ide.
Oh, Ide. Yeah, Ide. Uchi Ide. The guy who had his super license revoked for being too slow.
That was the one I was thinking of, because you and I have talked about him before.
I tell you now, put him in that Mercedes world champion. Give him his license back.
Yeah, but no, I'd forgotten about Ukyo Katayama. God, that's going back a few years as well. And Shinji Nakano, that was the other one that I remember in recent years. Was he Ligier and Prost?
Ligier and Minardi.
Oh, was he a Minardi driver?
Yeah,
well, you would know that. You lucky Minardi.
His swan song was 1998 alongside Esteban Tuero.
Wow.
Yeah,
do you know what? He had some half decent finishes in that.
Yeah, I know he did.
7th in Canada.
Yeah, I know. Like he could drive. Like he wasn't a bad driver. He just had no funding.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So no, I going back to what we were saying, I was holding out a lot of hope for
at last a Japanese driver who's going to be exciting, a bit of pace, a bit of something about him. And he's kind of largely just continued the trend, which is such a shame. Maybe
I'm still prepared to give him time. I still have in the back of my mind that he will come good and he'll start to pull something. I
hope so. I mean, I hope once he's bedded in this season, get this year out of the way, get through your rookie year. You know you've got a contract next season, so now is the time to just soak in as much information as you can. The problem he has is that he keeps on overstepping the mark and binning the car. And in binning the car, he's then costing himself the track time that's going to help him out to improve. It's a vicious circle for him because he just needs to calm it down. That's all he needs to do. Yeah. He kind of reminds me at this stage where a very early Romain Grosjean who had flashes of fucking brilliance, but then would crash. And it took a sports psychologist to get him to fucking sort it out, to just bring him down. And then he started banging in decent results. I think maybe Yuki needs something like that. And I'm sure Red Bull have got all this, because they moved him to Italy anyway, to be with the team, to put him in the simulator every chance he can get. Just a bit of a shame, really. Obviously, we're kind of skirting around the big incident of Monza.
There was an incident at Monza?
Strangely enough, I read a post-it note somewhere that said there was an incident at Monza.
Who knew?
It turns out, checking it out, it's legit. The title battle.
As you know, I'm getting old. My memory's not what it used to be. I can't remember if you and I have had a really clear conversation on this. So I don't think I necessarily know your feelings. So I'm going to push this straight to you this time, and I'm going to get you to give me your thoughts and opinion, and then I'll retort.
Yeah. Okay. Who's at fault? Yeah, who's at fault? Oh, it's an interesting one, because you've got two guys who are in the midst of probably the tightest title battle we've seen. Probably, Hamilton's fiercest title fight since Rosberg, I would say. And we're finally now seeing a driver that's capable of making the great Hamilton fluster and make mistakes and you can hear it in his team radio messages how pent up he is and how on edge he is all the time. Now, obviously you've got the situation where they're going at it again in the race.
Yeah.
Verstappen has had a slow pit stop, but has come out of the pits, guns blazing, to make up the difference because of the sticky wheel. Hamilton comes in the fucking pits, same fucking thing, not quite as long, but
wasn't as bad.
Yeah, wasn't as bad as an issue, but it still delayed him, and it delayed him enough to create this amazing situation where Verstappen's undercut pace has allowed him to close the gap.
Yeah.
Verstappen's delay has pushed him back into the window, and then
we're skirting around the issue.
No. No. And then we cut to this amazing scene where we've got Hamilton gunning it down the pits, and you've got Verstappen on the outside. At that moment in time, I was literally holding my breath, and I was like, this ain't going to end well. Sure enough, we go into the corner, we come through. Fuck's sake. Verstappen's trying to go around the outside to get the inside for turn 2, which is a fair move. I've done it many a time on simulators. You've done it probably the same many a time on simulators. Hamilton obviously doesn't want to doesn't want to let Verstappen go, because fuck me, this is the best chance I've got of keeping him behind at this moment in time. You know, this is for the title. This is blood for the title now. Verstappen, obviously, though, is a driver that is never going to fucking back out of an opportunity like this. There's a bit of track there. I'm Verstappen. I want this track. This track is mine. Now, I've seen many arguments, and obviously we know what happened with the steward's call on it. However, could Hamilton have left more space? Meh. Yeah, probably, if he let Verstappen go. But in a realistic world, are you going to let your title rival go? I don't know. For me, at fault, I would say, with a gap that was always going to close, I would probably still say Verstappen was at fault on the basis that he's launched his car into a tight, well, not necessarily a tightening space, because there was a bit of track left. But the angle he's come round the outside at to then take that second corner, he was never going to make that in a sense of getting a decent exit out of that corner, no matter what happened there, because of the acute angle he had. It was a close call. At one point I sort of erred on the thing of, is it a racing incident? Is it? But I don't know. I do kind of agree with the stewards giving the penalty to Verstappen on this occasion, just because it ended up launching. Sort of, he bounced on that. It was. Do you know what? It was almost a replica. Did I not send you the fucking stream clip of Perez bouncing across that same curb into me and ripping my front wing off on F1 2021? Exact same thing. I came down. Okay, I might have done. I came down to turn 1, same situation. I came down to turn 1 on the right hand side. Perez on the outside. Perez has gone right round the outside, and I've left maybe a car's width, about the same gap as Hamilton, and Perez has bounced across that and into me. Interestingly, in the game also gave Perez the penalty for launching across the curb into me rather than me. It's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. I'm just saying. But for me, I'm going to say it, Verstappen, for me, probably at fault, being too aggressive again, when really Hamilton coming out the pits with tyres not up to temperature. If you'd just taken a better line through the opening 2 turns, he would have had the run through Curva Grande into the next part of the track.
Yes.
That's... Yeah. I think, for me, that is Verstappen's maturity again. He just sees that. It's like a bull on a red flag. It's like, I can be in front of Hamilton. And he just goes for it. He needs to, like we've said this many times, he needs to learn when to attack, when not to attack. Because let's not forget, Verstappen is the championship points leader at this moment in time.
Yes, he is. It wouldn't have been if the race result had stayed the way it was, or if Lewis had gone on to win the race, which I think was like a potentially likely outcome. Yeah. But yeah. Okay. So, my opinion on this incident has changed.
Okay.
And my initial reaction, I think, will surprise you.
Oh, okay.
When the incident happened, I was declaring it a 50-50 in a racing incident. But if I was going to apportion more blame to one than the other, I was giving more to Lewis than I was to Max. Because if you watch the onboard from Max, there is a car's width, and Lewis closes it as he starts to get closer to the apex, which is a normal racing line. It's what you'd expect anyone to do. And my assumption was this was a really fierce reaction from Lewis because Max had pushed him off coming through the chicane after Curva Grande on lap
Yes.
1
Yes.
and really shoved him off the
Yeah.
road. I mean, that was just fucking rude. And then they were showing videos on Sky Sports and what have you of him doing the same at Imola and other races earlier in the year. So I thought at the beginning, I thought this was Lewis going, do you know what?
Fuck
You
you.
jumped up, little git.
Yeah.
Elbows out. Have some of that. What's made me change my mind and apportion more blame to Max and agree with the stewards is actually from Karen Chandok. And I was trying to find the original tweet whilst we were talking. I have found it, but it took me a while because the original tweet has been deleted. But somebody tweeted Karen Chandok and said, all right, explain this then. And they show Lewis and Kimi Räikkönen when he was in the Ferrari in the same position, but Kimi being forced to back out and Lewis making it round. And what Karen Chandok said was really clear is actually, if you look at the two side by side, Lewis was a wheel in front of Kimi going into turn 1 before we get to turn 2. So Kimi obviously had the inside and then got further in front.
But he's behind,
He was behind going into the corner. Lewis was in front.
Yeah.
If you look at the same accident that Max and Lewis had, Max was halfway up Lewis's car, but at no point was he ever in front.
Yeah.
So actually, when Lewis then takes that corner and then tries to take his normal line, there is a perfectly good escape road there for exactly this reason, because we've seen this happen time and time again. And it was, now I reflect on it and having seen these other angles and other opinions, it was Max being too hot-headed and not knowing when to give up the place.
Yeah.
But if I put aside the racing incident for a moment, I'm going to get a bit personal.
Oh, fuck it, hell.
You know what really pissed me off? And actually, to this day, I am still angry, physically angry about this.
Okay.
Is Max Verstappen and Christian Horner made a huge song and dance about what an arsehole Lewis Hamilton was for celebrating his podium at Silverstone when that Max had had a nasty accident.
Yep.
Max has an accident which he is found to be at fault for, whether he agrees with it or not. Lands his car on top of Lewis Hamilton's head, whereby the halo was the only thing that saved a fairly serious injury, potentially life-changing or life-ending injury for Lewis Hamilton. Max gets out the car and walks off without even a second thought of going up and going, "Are you all right, Lewis?"
Yeah.
The hypocrisy from the Red Bull camp at the moment is unreal. How can you have such little care for another human being that you don't think, oh shit, I might have been taken out of the race, but my entire car appears to be on his head. I better check that he's okay.
Yeah.
Can't fathom it.
Do you know, I'm not being funny as well, because obviously Spa's a prime example of this. Obviously Lando had a massive fucking accident. Verstappen, I believe, had pole position, but he still celebrated his pole position. And yet, there's a driver in the medical facility. Oh, well, hang on a minute. Let's re-fucking wind, because that's exactly what you guys had a go at Hamilton about. Now, you can't fucking come out with this bullshit and then just, think you're above that. It's absolute fucking bullshit, and I fucking hate it. I saw the pictures, and you're quite right. Verstappen just walks away, and he just takes a cursory glance at the Mercedes, and then just carries on walking. And you're like, are you fucking for real? And Verstappen was questioned on this. Did you not feel the need to go and check on Lewis? His reply was, I could see his hands flailing the steering wheel and the wheels spinning in reverse gear. So it's quite clear to see that he was just trying to unstick his car. What if he was having a seizure in that car where he was fitting on the wheel with his foot on the accelerator?
And yet, Ayrton Senna, who was known for being a fierce racer and would push you off the track to win, stopped his car at Spa because he saw exactly the same. Someone with their foot flat on the gas, revs going to go and save
their life, essentially.
God, why am I... Eric Comas. Was it Eric Comas?
It was Eric Comas, in the Ligier. He'd binned it, didn't he? It was Belgium.
I thought it was the LaRousse.
We spoke about it, Belgium, didn't we?
We did, and now I'm completely... It was Eric Comas,
Yeah, it was, because he pulled his tongue out of his throat and stuff, didn't he? Because he'd swallowed his fucking tongue.
Yeah. I can't get it. And you talk about the Spa incident recently.
And
Sebastian Vettel, who again could be an aggressive driver,
do you know what?
stopping and refusing to move on until he got the thumbs up from Lando to say he was okay.
And
this is an absolute lack of maturity from Max Verstappen, and the fact that this is something. Oh God, I'm getting on a high horse now, and I'm going to rant for a while.
Go for it. Yeah,
bear with me, guys. This is something that really, really bugs me because he's still on his high horse. He's still banging on about it at the Russian press conferences, and he's still being rude, frankly, in these press conferences and saying, "I'm not answering this question. This question's stupid." I try to get this into my 10, 11, and 12-year-old kids' heads that actually the measure of a man is to be able to put your hands up and go, "Do you know what? I was wrong. I apologize. I will rectify this behavior going forward." The people who constantly defend the situations when they are clearly in the wrong are immature morons. And linked to that, Christian Horner is vehemently defending Max and sticking up for him as well. And this to me smacks of, I see this at school gates as well, the parent who will defend their child.
My child could never do that.
Clearly in the wrong. I have seen my child punch yours in the face, knock him to the ground and rub his face in dirt. No, you didn't see that. My child would never do that. He's a little angel. Come here. Wake up. Wake up. It doesn't help anybody. It creates this entitled generation. We need people to take accountability and responsibility for their actions.
Yes.
Max fucked up. Max did something that was wrong. He's then continuing to defend why he felt he was right, despite being proven wrong. And he's just, I can't stand it. He just needs to grow up. He was 16 or whatever when he joined Formula One, and we always knew he was mature. He's not 16 anymore. Lando Norris, George Russell, these other guys who are younger than him show maturity beyond his years.
Well, beyond their own years, fucking hell.
I'm really starting to lose the love for Max Verstappen. When he first came in, I thought he was exciting and he was going for gaps. And I was, look, it's like a young Lewis Hamilton. He's really racy. And now he's just being antagonistic and he needs to stop or go. I'm getting really fed up with it now. Right. Rant over.
No, I completely agree with you. He's not ever matured from that first point when he came in. That we've not seen that. There's no denying he's a fast and quick driver, but he's just. It wouldn't surprise me that if he did win the title this year, that it would be his only title win because he's his own worst enemy.
I'd agree with that.
I would say, he's going to be one of these drivers who is, we'll go way back as a comparison. In some respects, he reminds me of a Gilles Villeneuve who was fast and aggressive, but at times was his own worst enemy when he just went too fucking far every time and would bin the car or crash the car. Because let's not forget, Gilles Villeneuve was blindingly quick and should have been a world champion. But he wasn't. But there was races when he ripped wheels off of his cars, and because he was almost like a Colin McRae, do or die. It was pedal to the metal, flat out. We're getting elbows out. We're fucking going racing, boys.
Not sure if I like the analogy with Gilles Villeneuve because I quite like Gilles Villeneuve.
Don't get me wrong. I still prefer Gilles Villeneuve to fucking Max Verstappen. Because Gilles Villeneuve could race hard and fair when it came to it.
Yeah.
Max can race hard, but he can't do fair.
No, he can't. And actually, as a slightly more recent analogy and potentially more flattering, I'd be likening him a little bit to a young Michael Schumacher.
Yeah.
Because let's not forget, I vividly remember, because I sat and watched the whole race, Michael crashing into Damon at Adelaide in 94?
94, yeah.
When Damon should have won that title. And actually, I really wish Damon had won that title, because after the year Williams had with Senna's death, and of course Roland Ratzenberger, let's not forget that either. I think it would have been a great thing for the team.
Yeah.
But that was Schumacher pushing his luck. And I had completely forgotten until watching the Schumacher documentary, which we can talk about if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was disqualified from the 1997
For
season
trying the same
entirely
shit, yeah.
for doing the same shit really aggressively to Jack Villeneuve. And in the documentary, Ross Brawn talks about it, and he says Michael walked back to the pits and he was furious. He was so angry because he was adamant that Jack could hit him. And I don't know if that's a different mindset or if that's just adrenaline. You know, I accept the driver getting out the car and smacking someone or shouting at someone because the adrenaline's going, and I've been in that situation. I understand it completely. When you've calmed down and you understand things rationally is when you make those real
Of
judgments.
course.
And I think Michael did come to terms with that
Yeah, he
he was
did.
the one who caused that
Yeah.
accident. But it was one of the most blatant kind of he's
Oh.
going to overtake me. There's nothing I
You
can
could
do.
just see the
Oh, well,
jink
fuck it.
across.
Whoop.
Yeah, it was fucking like thing because an interesting thing about that is like Jack was very lucky to continue. Because the battery that actually powered all the electronics on the car had been dislodged from its fixture, so it was actually inside the car being held on by just the wires. And that's why he backed off. He backed completely off for the rest of the race because all he needed was a point, basically, you know. And
because he was leading when that happened, or he was overtaking.
Well, it was the battle for the lead, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure Mika and DC both got past him.
Yeah, they got past him, and Gerhard Berger completed the podium.
Okay.
In his final race, Gerhard Berger took a podium for Benetton.
Berger.
Yeah, but you know, you just think, fucking hell, like if that one wire had come off, that is it. I mean, Villeneuve probably still would have been declared champion because Schumacher was obviously disqualified.
Yeah, because of disqualification. Yeah,
you kind of, when you win a title, you want to do it on track. You know, because obviously at the time Schumacher wasn't disqualified until after the race. It's always a nice thing for Villeneuve. He can always say legitimately, "Well, I still beat him on track." You know, he can legitimately say that, even if he didn't achieve much else after that. He, you know, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But sorry, we've digressed.
We have digressed significantly, but you know, the point stands though. I still think unless Verstappen really matures, he's not going to be this continuous world champion year after year that everyone hopes he's going to be, because he's going to let himself down and he's going to let the team down in critical situations.
I agree entirely. And, you know, just to reiterate the point, because, again, I always had quite a lot of like and love for Christian Horner, and I'm starting to see a real difference in him now. I'm starting to see some really concerning leadership and decision-making ability within Red Bull.
Yeah.
And it's really noticeable for me that Adrian Newey has stepped away from that role and we're seeing these decisions.
Yes.
Because let's not forget, Sergio Perez finished third on track, but was classified as fifth, because he made an illegal overtake and the team said, no, don't give it back. Keep going. And we've seen this in a few times where not only have the team made the wrong decision, but they've then argued with the steward before a decision has been made.
Yeah.
They go and have that really aggressive conversation. They even marched into a steward's office at one point before they even said they were going to investigate.
They got told to get out or something, didn't they? At some point, I'm sure they got told to get out. Because you can't go forcing stewards' decisions. You can't go doing that. The stewards' decisions should be, you know, without the pressure, without the bias. You know, that's how it should be. And I feel that kind of Red Bull in doing that, they kind of try and force their hand.
Yeah. And this is really difficult because, you know, we both have a friend who works at Red Bull. We've talked in the past about inviting him into this podcast. And here I am challenging their main driver and their team principal and leadership decisions being made. But I will stand by it. I think there's some really questionable decision making and leadership in that team at the moment. And I don't know where this is coming from, because I don't think this was prevalent in their heyday. I don't even think it was prevalent 2 or 3 years ago. I wonder if some of it comes from Dr. Helmut Marko and some of the other big bods making decisions, and Christian Horner is not feeling comfortable to challenge them, because I do think it is, generally speaking, the wrong decision to rip a driver out the car halfway through a season.
Yeah, absolutely.
It destroys their confidence. The new driver coming in doesn't have time to adapt and learn. I don't see the value in it whatsoever. It's a knee-jerk reaction that serves no purpose. So there's some really odd decision making going on, and it's not doing them any favors. And
No.
if they lose this title, it will be down to either Max's temperament
Yeah.
or poor leadership decisions from the team.
Yeah. I mean, there has been some weird calls, like you say, like the penalties where jumping across the chicane and overtaking someone. Any other team is straight away on the blower to the driver saying, "Mate, give the position back, and we'll go again. Just let him back at next opportunity, let him through, we'll go for it again." But to tell your driver to carry on, it's like, what the fuck? That's a slam dunk penalty then. I don't know what world they're living in. It kind of tarnishes what is, for all intents and purposes, a really exciting season this year. And it is the tarnishing thing that is on it. Now, obviously, we know Dr. Helmut Marko is in his position because he's really close with Dietrich Mateschitz, whatever you want to pronounce his name. And it's quite an interesting one because obviously he does have the final absolute on any sort of driver decisions, all that kind of stuff, which is a very weird way of running the team because I still believe and maintain that should be entrusted to the team principal to have that overseeing arc, not having like so many different managers in all charge of things all at the same level. That just, it doesn't work. It creates awkward tensions, and obviously in Helmut's eyes, he for all intents and purposes, Max is his little project, his little baby, and he's gonna be protected. And unfortunately, the number 2 that goes in that team is always going to be the one that fucking has to face the music. I can see why Danny Rick wanted out. I get it.
Yeah.
100%. It makes it so much clearer to see why certain drivers were like even Webber. Webber stuck it out for a long time. Alongside their first protege,
Not bad for a number 2 driver.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean...
Well, see, it's interesting, actually, because now you flag that up, there were some really poor decisions and leadership choices being made then, because Mark is a great driver. Probably he's up there for me with Rubens Barrichello and some of those other, and Felipe Massa, great drivers that should have been world champions and weren't.
2010 should have been his year. He should have won that title, but...
Absolutely. And there was some really questionable on-track decisions from Seb. I did not like Sebastian Vettel as a driver back then. I think we've both warmed to him significantly over the last few years. But again, those decisions were defended by the team, and Mark felt ostracized and out as an outcast. To the point where he ended up leaving F1, frankly, prematurely, because he was still fast. He was still ready for it.
He was still achieving some great results. He was still as sharp as ever.
But it seems where we talk about leadership of teams as well, the sort of that mixed dual team principle and decision making between Christian Horner and Helmut Marko. If you look at some of the other leading teams that have been through those drastic changes of leadership, they've all fallen by the wayside.
Yeah.
2 great examples. McLaren. McLaren were Ron Dennis for years and years and years, and then they went through a number of changes to Martin Whitmarsh. Who was the old Renault guy they had? Eric Boulier came in. And then there was someone else came in whose name, I can't remember the other guy's name. There was another one who came in as well, until eventually Zach Brown came over and appointed Seidel and gave them some stability, and they've moved forwards from that. And then the other team that comes to mind is Ferrari.
Yeah.
Ferrari went through a phase of changing team principles every
year. Yeah. And they're and ahhing about changing again, aren't they? Because of their fluctuating thing at the moment. You can't keep on doing it and expecting instantaneous results, because no matter what the next person takes over, he's going to be dealing with whatever was left from the previous one anyway. And that's always going to take time to change. You're going to need to go through recruitment processes. Obviously, if you're going to hire from rival teams, you've got to go through a cooling off period. You can't just bring them straight in. Because of all the the secrecy and all that kind of stuff. Because obviously, what we don't want is another Spygate. Fucking God forbid.
Oh God, no.
Because that was awful. I
really liked Arriva Bene, Maurizio Arriva Bene.
And I liked him as well. He was proper old school. Old school sort of leader. unfortunately, you know, he
Very
didn't.
typically Italian.
Yeah, very typical Italian. They said you could always find him, and he would have, because he used to smoke, didn't he? He was a smoker. They would say, you know, you'd find him in the motorhome first thing in the morning, and he'd have his espresso and a cigarette, and you just knew. And you don't disturb him in that process. That is his morning time. You don't go up and disturb him. Old school.
I'd like to think there was also two semi-clad blondes in the bed with him from the night before. Different ones each weekend.
Different ones each week, you know. And he's got his like guys in the black suits and shades outside, standing guard on the door, you know, fucking mafia style. I rate this guy. He's probably got like an old style James Bond-esque wooden yacht or something built in 1960 something. Yeah, he's living the dream, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
But interesting, you mentioned a name there, Martin Whitmarsh, who obviously we're going to see a lot more of now in the F1 paddock.
He's back, isn't he?
He's back. He's head of some role in Aston Martin. The role eludes me. Oh, here we go. So it's kind of it's a really interesting way that Aston Martin are doing this. So they're basically changing their model now. So obviously they've got the new factory being built on the old Jordan ground to go alongside the current facility. They're getting a wind tunnel put in and all this kind of stuff. It's quite exciting developments from Lawrence Stroll, really, with the aim of obviously within 5 years they want to be contending for wins and titles. That's the aim. I like the ambition and the fact that he's investing in the infrastructure first and foremost is a fucking amazing thing, because we get so many teams coming going, yeah, we're gonna fucking we want to be winning in 5 years, but do nothing with their infrastructure. Whereas Lawrence has come in, he's increased the employee count, he's recruiting people in the different positions, and now they're getting a brand new facility, which is fucking awesome. I've seen the I don't know if you've seen the plans drawn up for it, but it looks incredible. And so part of that change is obviously Martin Whitmarsh has joined. I've just got the article up now to think. So he's actually going to be heading up the secondary sort of McLaren. You know, you had McLaren and you got McLaren Technologies.
Yes.
So it's a very similar thing. So we've got Aston Martin, the racing arm, and now we've got Aston Martin Performance Technologies, which is what Martin Whitmarsh is heading up. Which is quite an interesting thing to see that they're kind of taking that McLaren approach. It's almost like they want to be McLaren.
There are worse people to want to be.
Yeah, there are. To be honest, you know what? There's a lot of people in the Aston Martin project that I rate. I like Otmar Zafnauer. I think he's a great team principal. Yeah, I think he's awesome. It'll be interesting to see how this pans out for Aston Martin. They're obviously serious about going racing in Formula One if they're investing in this. Because let's not forget, it wasn't until Lawrence Stroll brought Aston Martin that they were on the verge of going out of business. So it's a massive turnaround in a short space of time. So let's see what happens.
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued as about how this will go. Now, don't get me wrong. So his official role is CEO of Aston Martin F1. Now, I'm sure as a leader, he's got a great business mind, and I'm sure there are great things that he can do to keep that company running. And when I think of leadership, I tend to think more about leadership in the workplace. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek's TED Talks and books. In fact, I've got one of his on the go over here, and things along those lines. So there's that's part of leadership for me. Sporting leadership, I tend to think slightly differently, and I think actually a lot of it comes from those imposing leaders who know their own mind, know their own vision, and they don't want to bring you on the journey, which is what they do in business. They want to find people who agree with them and are going to join them because they believe the journey without you having to convince them of it.
Yeah.
And if you look at people like Toto Wolff.
Toto. Yeah.
Very rare Toto Wolff is lost for words. He knows what he wants to say.
Yep.
He's clear about it. And Christ, you would not want to cross him.
No.
Go back even further and look at people like Ron Dennis. Again, you would not want to cross Ron Dennis because he'd give you the full-on hairdryer treatments, but he knew exactly what he wanted, and he didn't ever shy away from saying something because he thought it would be controversial. Martin Whitmarsh, when he was the lead and CEO of McLaren Racing Group, I always got the real feeling from him that he was unsure of himself and he would shy away from, you know, getting in someone's face and being controversial. And sometimes you get that with people when you hear the ums and the ahs. You'll have heard this yourself. You and I tend to speak. We know what we want to say. Sometimes we slow down. Sometimes we fall over our words, but we get through what we want to do. Whereas other people are those kind of, we went to, and you think, oh my God, if you say one more time, I might headbutt you.
Yes, yeah.
That for me is Martin Whitmarsh.
Yeah, that's
so.
Yeah,
I'm intrigued.
And let's not forget he was in charge of McLaren when they started their downward trend in some regards. Like they had they had a couple of half decent seasons, but it all started to really fade to shit under his leadership, and obviously it wasn't. Then we obviously endured a bit of a brief Ron Dennis comeback before he then got overturned and hoofed out the fucking door.
Yeah. So he was team principal between 2009 and 2013, but the last time McLaren won a Formula One world title was 2008.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. He presided over the start of the downturn to McLaren.
Well, let's not forget, because obviously the 2014 car would have been designed in 2013 when he was at the helm. And the 2014 car was shit. You know, and the 2013 car wasn't much cop either. What did that have? That had, like, 2013 car had Jenson Button and Magnussen on the podium at the season opener, and then fucking nothing else after that. That was it. Yeah, shocking. Shocking. I don't know. It's a bit of a weird choice for Martin Whitmarsh. Obviously, I get why they're trying to look for people with experience of F1 and all that kind of stuff. Is he the right fit for some project like that? I don't know. Maybe if he just sticks to the business side of it rather than leading everything. But I don't know.
And I mean, who else, in theory, who else would be available? I mean, if you wanted to pull a great team principal in that would give you a great chance of winning a title, for me, there's only one man, and that'd be Ross Brawn. But there's no way in hell any Formula One team on the grid is going to get Ross Brawn to come out of retirement and be a team principal again. He's quite content in his role as deputy chief exec of Formula One or whatever, or Liberty Media, whatever it is that he's doing. And I can't think, apart from Ron Dennis, who again is not going to go anywhere other than McLaren, and with everything that's gone on, I very much doubt he would come back to McLaren either. I can't think of another team principal.
The other standout team principal for me before those would be the current head of the FIA, Jean Todt. He's another man that knew what he wanted, and he made it happen. It was very much a case of this is his vision, this is where he's going with this. He presided over the most successful period in Ferrari history, which is no mean feat. That's fucking amazing.
In fairness, with Ross,
it was the dream team, absolute fucking dream team. Everyone involved in that team at that time. It was a beautiful. Looking back, obviously we were fed up with Ferrari win as a spectator. But looking back, it was a beautiful thing to see a team in such synchronization for such an elongated space and time. And I largely think in years to come, we'll look back and think, fucking hell, Mercedes, that period of domination, which has now been longer than the Ferraris' 5 years of domination. We've gone through a whole engine era with Mercedes just dominating that entire period.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that comes down to the relevant leadership, and I do highly rate Toto in that regard. And equally, what made me think about that more was when Toto made it quite clear that he wasn't here for the long haul, and once he'd had his lot, he was going to move on, and he sort of indicated next year, maybe the year after. He's not sure, but he's ready to move on whenever. That for me was, I felt sad at the thought of losing Toto from the sport, but equally the fact that he's like, this is, I've reached this part and this is great and this is amazing and I'm now the best in Formula One, but I want to go and do more. I want to go and do something else. So I was like that, but that's what makes him a great team principal.
Yeah, of course it does.
Because this isn't the pinnacle of his career. He wants something else, and he doesn't want it to be an F1.
Yeah, the hunger doesn't stop. Yeah, he's achieved everything a team principal could want to achieve in Formula One. Let's not beat around the bush. He's done fucking wonders.
Yeah,
and I have no doubt he'll be successful in whatever he does.
Oh, 100%. 100%. The only other one, of course, that stands out for me as an obvious choice is Sir Frank Williams.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're not going to get Sir Frank in a team principal of any car on the grid, and he wouldn't come back to Williams. And I equally don't think he's healthy or well enough to be able to do so.
No.
Those days, unfortunately, are well behind us. But what a great leader he was, even to persevere after a life-changing incident that, had the same happen to me. I'd like to think I'd be as proactive and positive as him. In reality, I'd probably wheel my wheelchair into this room and never fucking leave it again until I die.
Fucking hell.
The man's a living legend.
He is.
Absolutely.
He is an absolute legend, and I rate him. All-time F1 legend, all-time F1 hero. Those days of like those sort of principles there, they're long gone now. We're into like kind of Doralton Capital and overseeing sort of consortiums. That's where we are with F1 now. The days of your backmarker teams, like outright backmarkers, I'm talking, the ones that no matter what they do every year, they're going to be a good 5 to 6 seconds a lap off the pace. The ones that muddle through, that era has gone. We had a brief comeback of it with HRT and Caterham, but look how long they lasted. A handful of seasons.
Think about the success that Jordan had. Eddie Jordan creating his own F1 team from the ruins or the remnants and the phoenix of the ashes from what he was doing in F3.
Yeah.
What does interest me though, because obviously I like sports in general. I'm a football fan as well.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, 99% of football managers are former players. They might not always have played at the pinnacle of their career. So Jose Mourinho is a great example, was never a leading star player for his club or country, but is one of the most successful managers of all time.
Yeah.
Whereas other managers, like Pochettino and players like that have played and played very well. It doesn't work that way in Formula One. I was just thinking about the list. I can think of Jackie Stewart.
Niki Lauda.
I can think of... Well, but Niki Lauda was never a team principal,
yes,
was he?
He was Jaguar.
Was he?
He took over once Stewart sold the team to Jaguar. He was appointed team principal by Jaguar.
That's interesting. I always thought he was like a senior advisor. I never remembered him as a team principal.
He was team principal for a while, and it didn't work out.
No, it didn't. But yeah, I mean, the only ones I could think of would be Prost and Jackie Stewart.
Yeah.
And neither of them did anything markedly amazing. I mean, obviously Frank Williams was a driver in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean,
and so was Christian Horner.
Christian Horner was. Toto Wolff did do some amateur racing, sort of like low level.
Yeah.
He didn't really do any sort of. He never made it up the the ladder.
And in fairness, I'm forgetting Bruce McLaren in office, who was a heroic driver, who was amazing.
Yes.
But nothing recently. Michael Schumacher didn't think about coming back as a team principal. Trying to think. Nigel Mansell didn't think I'll step up and take over as a team principal. Yeah. But I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go back to it because it's one of my favourite lines I've seen in years and years and years of watching F1 walks was Christian Horner saying to Martin Brundle on a grid walk, you were never fast enough to win here, were you, Martin? And as quick as a flash, Brundle turning around and went, that's right, I wasn't. You were never quick enough to make it to F1 though, were you? Or shame you weren't quick enough to make it to F1.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Just obliterated him there and then on the spot. It was fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
I love Martin Brundle. Actually, I'm going to take a quick sidebar here.
Oh,
Something something has really worried me this year. You might know something about this. I've tried researching it and I've come up short in all
Okay.
of my efforts.
Yep. Go on, fire.
Martin Brundle has missed a number of Grand Prix over the last 2 or 3 years because we've had Paul di Resta, Karen Chandok, and others.
And we've got the rest again this weekend. Yes.
Stepping in. And there's a few that I knew he was going to miss. He'd said it ahead of time, so I knew he wasn't going to be at one of the Austrian Grand Prix because he had travel restriction issues. He announced at some point via Twitter he was unwell and wasn't traveling to one. But now he seems to be missing more and more. Yep. And I can't find any online explanation to say why, other than I worry he's slowing down and thinking about stepping away from it at some point.
I don't think that's the case, and my case in point is, so I follow both him and his son on Instagram. Now, all of these triple headers, unfortunately, are clashing with a racing series that has made its comeback, that he is now racing in alongside his son as a duo. They are both racing in the revival, the classics series. They've been racing together in that, doing the classics races. They usually hit, like the ones they race at Goodwood. I've been viewing the Instagram stories, and that they have been testing a Jaguar E-Type, which they are both going to be racing in again. So he's kind of, in a sense, he's kind of returned to actually actively racing.
Okay.
So it's quite nice, and he's racing with his son, who, as we know, is also a commentator now.
He just sounds like Mini Martin. It's amazing.
Do you know, there's been times when I've flicked on the F2 and I've gone, why the fuck is Martin Brundle commentating on the F2? And then I twig and I'm like, oh no, this is Alex.
But, okay, that makes me feel a lot better because, he's not that old. And I know that as Murray Walker started getting towards the end of his career, he cited, I'm too old to be getting on a plane and flying to Japan and Abu Dhabi and Australia for these races. So, he started only doing the French and the British Grand Prix and things that were short hops for him. I understand. He was an old man. He lived to a good age. Yeah. I was really worried that Martin was losing the love, losing the passion, maybe unwell, and just wanting to step away from it. And that would be a shame because my dad hated Murray Walker, absolutely loathed his commentary.
Wow, okay.
My dad hates commentators in general. My old man, bless him, records Match of the Day every Saturday and watches it on Sunday. And the reason he does that is so he can watch the highlights and then fast forward through all the talky bits. So he's always hated commentators. Brilliant. He just wants to watch it. And, I get that and respect it for his own reasons. Yeah. I liked Murray. I thought he added something to it. But you can, the right commentator can either make or break your viewing experience. Yeah. And Martin for me is the perfect balance of enthusiastic, clear in what he's saying, with a great understanding that comes from actually experiencing it and having that knowledge of driving a car.
He's lived it. He's raced for some great teams as well. Benetton, McLaren, for fuck's sake.
McLaren, yeah.
Jordan, the thing is, Ligier.
I'd like to think, maybe we'll try this one weekend. I'd like to think you and I could sit and commentate over a Formula One Grand Prix and do a pretty decent job of it. But even me, would I rather listen to myself, or would I want to listen to James Hunt, Martin Brundle,
Murray Walker?
Maybe I was going to say Paul di Resta, but actually I might rather listen to myself than Paul di Resta.
My most underrated commentator, Ben Edwards. I like Ben Edwards.
Which one was Ben Edwards?
He was the Channel 4 guy who took over Channel 4.
I didn't enjoy him as much.
You see, Ben Edwards was fantastic when he commentated on BTCC back in the day. He had that excitable element to him. One that I do really rate as a commentator that is coming up, Alex Jakes. I rate this lad, Alex Jakes. He currently hosts the Formula One esports, but also every now and again does commentate on the Formula 2. And he's a great fucking commentator. Really is a good commentator. And there's a few others as well. You must pay attention to WTF1. You read any of that stuff?
From time to
Yeah.
time. From time to
So
time.
obviously Matt Gallagher, who does their YouTube content, he he started life out as an F1 YouTuber. That is how he started out. And he had this series on his YouTube channel which was called X Matty G. That was like, yeah. That was his thing. And he got into this whole presenting world and all this kind of stuff by hosting Matty's Rage Kitchen. And the Rage Kitchen was his, like we're doing now. It was his podcast like rundown of the F1 Grand Prix that had happened, and it was fucking brilliant. And it was brilliant. And then when he announced on YouTube that he was leaving to go and actually start his dream career as an F1 journalist and commentator on various things, I've never seen such an outpouring of it. And as soon as WTF1 like came to creation, everyone was chucking in the comments going, "Where's the fucking Rage Kitchen?" Da, da, da. It was just brilliant. But he's then, since doing just little things like that, he's now commentated on Formula 2 races, Formula 3 races. He's part of the team that hosts the F1 esports leagues. He's gone on to be quite a big bloke, really, in kind of the F1 journalism world.
Okay.
I would love to get there one day, but
Well, the thing is, it's about having that confidence in the person from their knowledge and ability that comes with it. I think so. I don't keep my ear to the ground, and I'm not that close to knowing who's coming up as an up and coming commentator and what have you. It's not something I've ever researched. But the expertise around it and who I would consider, as an ex-driver or someone picking up that role, Alex Brundle is brilliant in the same way his dad is. I like Jensen.
Jensen's great.
I think he's done a great job. I prefer Jensen to Paul di Resta.
Yeah.
I like Anthony Davidson.
I like Am. Good job. He's great with the technical stuff, like the bits he does on the side. I think he's great at that. That's kind of his element. He goes along quite nicely with Karen Chandok roaming around, sort of getting all of his stuff. Yeah.
I like Karen Chandok. I do. Yeah. But I suppose one thing I need to be aware of, and I'm gonna tell you something that might upset you.
Oh,
I know you're a little bit younger than I am, but this still might upset you. I need to be mindful of, because I miss people like Johnny Herbert being around. But Johnny, has been retired for a number of years. And whilst to my mind, that might not be that long ago, as you know all too well, Steve, things that I think were only yesterday are actually 20 years back.
Yes.
And what someone told me recently was two things I've heard this week alone, which have really scared me. One is yesterday, so today's the 26th of September, 2021.
It is now, yes. Yeah.
Yesterday, so actually I'm going back 2 days now, aren't I? The 24th of September, 2021, was the 30th anniversary of the album Nevermind by Nirvana, which came out in 1991. 30 years ago. That worried me. The other thing that someone said to me, which really bugged me, is the film Back to the Future. We all love the film.
We love Back to the Future, yeah.
Great trilogy. So the first film, Marty McFly takes the DeLorean and travels back in time from 1985 to 1955. And of course, it's so different. They're in classic cars. It's a different world. The 30-year gap.
Yeah.
So it's 2021 today. If you did the same journey and went back 30 years, you're going back to 1991. I remember 1991, and I remember 1991 quite clearly. Thank you very much. It was practically yesterday. So I do need to keep in my mind, that time frame that's gone by, and actually new fans coming up and watching this now.
They won't know who Johnny Herbert is.
Don't know who Damon Hill or Johnny Herbert is.
Well, I would say they probably have some idea as to Damon Hill because he's always mentioned in like historical terms as a world champion. Johnny Herbert, a race. He raced for some teams. He had a few wins.
But in that respect, Martin Brundle. I mean, I'd have to look up the stats to confirm this, but my gut tells me Johnny Herbert was more successful in terms of race wins and points than Martin Brundle was.
I don't know if he did it on points overall. I know Johnny had 3 race wins because he had 2 for Benetton and 1 for Stewart. Martin Brundle never won a race, but I think he had a good handful of podiums for. I want to say he had some podiums for Ligier and he had podiums for McLaren. I think he probably had about 12 podiums. I'm going to go in that. I'm going in that ballpark.
I mean, he raced from 1984 till 1996. To sit here and add up every point he earned would probably take me. Actually, no, it wouldn't take me that long because he was racing in the day when you only got points for the first six
positions. Yeah,
you didn't get that many.
Same for Johnny. Johnny raced in the same era. Yeah,
absolutely. So Johnny raced from 1989 till 2000. But yes, so we had a win. So we had 2 wins for the Benetton in '95.
That's it.
Where he partnered Schumi, of course. One at Silverstone and one at Monza. Was it Monza that year? Italian Grand Prix.
Yeah, I think it was.
Monza. Yeah. And then his last win came at the European Grand Prix, which was run at Nürburgring in a Stewart in 1999. Yeah. So yeah, he won 3 races.
Yeah, he did.
Whereas Martin, he had a few. I can see a few third places in here.
Yeah,
I can't see any seconds.
I think his yeah, he did for McLaren. I'm sure he had some for McLaren in the year.
We had 1 second place for McLaren at Monaco and 1 in the Benetton at Monza.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. The guy can drive, and he could drive a Formula 1 car, or frankly, any car, far better than I could even dream of doing so.
He currently holds the record, doesn't he, for being the person who's driven the most different Formula 1 cars in their lifetime.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, he did jump teams a bit.
Yeah, he did, but also all the stuff he's done since retiring from driving, so Goodwood and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously all the Sky Sports stuff. I think it's something like ridiculous, like he's driven 47 different F1 cars, something in that ballpark. And yet he still keeps on being invited down to drive more of the fucking things.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, that age that he was in, 1984 till 1996, gives him a really interesting breadth of cars that he drove. So the beginning of his career was early Cosworth V8s.
Yeah.
Then he drove those monsters, the 1.5 litre V6 Renault turbos for the late 80s. I mean, they were absolute animals.
Yeah.
Then he went back to things like the Judd V8s. He drove the Yamaha V12 in the Brabham.
Yes.
Then another Ford V8. Then he was the Renault and Peugeot V10s, the Mugen Honda V10, and another Peugeot V10. So he drove across a wide variety of engines in that era. Yeah. Nothing in the modern hybrid era.
He's driven the Mercedes of the modern hybrid era.
Well, sorry, not.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Competitively, yeah. But I mean, it's an amazing achievement because Seb Vettel. I always remember Sky did a thing when they first got the contract for all this kind of stuff. So when Seb was at Ferrari, when Sky got, Sky were doing all their big push with F1 content, and they sent Martin down to, is it Fiorano or wherever it is? They sent him down there anyway, and Seb asks, he turns to the camera crew and he goes, "How old is this guy?" And they're like, "Oh, he's like, what is he now, 60 something?" And Seb
62,
and Seb. So it's only a couple of years ago when Seb's at Ferrari, and Seb turns around and he goes, "Wow," he goes, "I hope I'm still able to get invited down to drive F1 cars when I'm his age." And it's like, and do you know what? Fair fucking play to the lad. 60 years old, he's still getting himself in those cockpits, and he's still able to put a car around a racetrack. I love it. I think he's a gem. He is a gem.
He is.
And it will be a shame if we do, lose him from presenting. But he is, in terms of the commentary team, like Sky have really invested a lot in him. He is kind of always marketed as their main commentator guy. Obviously, you got Crofty, but Martin was always the face of it. When they brought Sky F1 channel out, Martin's face was fucking everywhere.
Well, so I was trying to remember. If memory serves me right, he picked up commentating when Formula 1 moved from the BBC to ITV for its live coverage. And part of his sort of spiel and what he did was he introduced the grid walks. Yes. It didn't do grid walks in the way that Martin does them now.
No.
And now, if you look at the difference, if you go back and watch Martin Brundle's coverage for ITV in sort of 96, 97, whenever it was, might have been a bit later than that in fairness, and see how empty the grid was in comparison to what it looks like in a modern race now. It's unbelievable. He was the progenitor of that. No one had thought about this.
No, exactly. He and because he was fresh off of the F1 grid, wasn't he, at the time? He kind of still had that access where people would talk to him from the teams. He had a great rapport with everyone in the paddock, and it was awesome because he was able to then just start trying these things out, and it fucking worked, and it was great because you're on the grid, you're in amongst all the action, getting the driver's final thoughts, and all that kind of extra detail. And now look at it, every TV station has a grid walk, every single one, and it's a main feature of any racing series now, to be honest. You even get it on BTCC where you get them running down the fucking grid, and it's just for that to have cascaded beautifully across the motorsport world. Yeah, fair play to the lad.
He was a great driver. I won't necessarily put him in the category of one of the greatest to have never won a title, one of the greatest to have never won a race, certainly.
Yeah, certainly. And let's not forget, him and Johnny Herbert have something in common. They both had massive accidents that fucked up their ankles.
Yeah,
and you just think if that hadn't happened, because let's not forget, in Formula 3, who was the only driver to go toe-to-toe with Senna?
Martin
Brundle. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he had his accident, and it was such a shame. But these things happen, It is what it is. We don't know what the alternate reality would have played out like, but I imagine we would have had a fucking stellar career for Brundle without. Well, same for Johnny. Shall we have a look at the current? Obviously, the current driver lineups. There's only one seat available. I think we'd better go through that for the viewers, because obviously a lot has happened with the driver market, with confirmations and contract extensions and all this good stuff. So obviously one of the main ones, the worst kept secret in the paddock, was obviously Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton has a contract until the end of 2023, so he's got 2 years on his contract.
Is that 2023 or is it 2022?
It's been. He has got 2 years. He's got end of 2023. That's what I've got here confirmed.
So
this is on the official.
I'm just thinking about this though, because the current season is going to be 21-22. So the next season is going to be 22-23. So his contract might only be for one more racing season. Would be my thought.
It says end of 2023. So that'll be 2 more seasons, because you have 22 and 23.
Okay.
Will that be the last 2 years of Hamilton's career? Well,
I would think so.
Possibly, yeah. George Russell.
He's still leading the pack and still loves what he's doing.
Well, this is it. George Russell's gone to Mercedes. He's just been declared as multi-year contract. Obviously, they're not going to give away their entire hand. So yeah, the change there. Obviously, Valtteri stepping away from Mercedes. That I think he's had his fair crack at his time at Mercedes, old Valtteri. Time for a change up. And let's not forget, George is racing this season. That's really, again, another driver that's really flourishing this year. Becoming Mr. Sunday now, to be honest. He's not just Mr. Saturday anymore. He's becoming a pretty well-rounded package.
He is, very much so.
I can't wait to see what he can do in a big car. But then, technical regulation change, you could end up in a shit car. A
risk.
Yeah. Obviously, Red Bull sticking with Verstappen and Perez. Perez's contract is up at the end of 2022, so he's got 1 year left on that deal. Which I know Helmut Marko's already chatted some rubbish about how Perez is a stopgap for them. And
I think that's so disrespectful.
Yeah, do you know what it is? I do not like Helmut Marko. I think to be honest, he's quite a disgusting human being with how he is. Because he also, when he was asked about, okay, well, if Perez is a stopgap, who's coming up? Because Tsunoda's not performing. And
you already knocked Pierre Gasly on the head.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And then they mentioned Gasly, and he goes, "Oh well, Pierre will only be at AlphaTauri for another year anyway, and then we'll have to review his situation within the Red Bull infrastructure." I've already got ideas as to what will happen with Pierre Gasly. I'll go through that after we finish this round out, but I'll come back to him.
Okay.
So yeah, a bit disrespectful towards Perez because he's a handy driver, and I think he's still got
Yeah.
some good years left in him, to be honest.
100%. 100%.
McLaren, obviously, status quo is maintained for another 2 years with both drivers. Danny Rick and Norris retained until 2023, so we've got another 2 years of those.
Good to see it.
Yeah, really good to see that. I rate that. Aston Martin have done 1 year extensions for Vettel and Stroll. I mean, why they do that for Stroll, I don't know, because Stroll's not going anywhere. Stroll's going to be there until the end of time. Well, or until Dad gets bored and sells the team. Seb Vettel, obviously in his twilight years, I think, as well. Much the same as Hamilton coming into the final couple of years.
I think next season will be make or break for Vettel.
Yeah.
I think if the car's competitive and he's challenging for points, he might stay. I think if the car's uncompetitive and he's not up at the sharp end, I think he might call it time. I don't think it'll be end of his racing career.
No, he'll
I think
do
he
something.
might try his hand at Le Mans or rallying or Dakar or something. But I think that might be time for him.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree. It's just a shame we're stuck with Stroll because I think you could put a much more capable driver behind the wheel of that car and get more out of it. To be honest, like I say, he has flashes of pace every now and again where he's just like, well, where's his he's pulled that out of the bag. But again, he's not consistent. Like, he won the Formula 3 title, but that's years and years ago now. He's been a bit all over the place. Alpine. Esteban Ocon obviously there for the long haul. He's going to be their number one, I think. And Alonso obviously staying for another year. I think that'll be Alonso's last.
Probably.
He's going to see the team through this technical change. Ocon by then, you would hope, would be stepping up. I know he had his win, but that was kind of a freak race where he drove well. Let's not take that away from him. He drove fucking brilliantly. But we don't see that enough from Ocon.
No.
But yeah, so Alpine sticking with the status quo. Ferrari, we all know about Ferrari. It's Leclerc and Sainz. AlphaTauri, we've already discussed those chaps. Gasly and Tsunoda. Alfa Romeo, possibly going with a completely new driver lineup. So they've got obviously Valtteri Bottas coming as the team leader because Kimi retiring, the god that is.
The legend, the man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah, and quite interestingly, the second seat obviously is the one that's up for discussion because obviously Giovinazzi, the option is there for Alfa Romeo to extend Giovinazzi. However, what's his name? Is it Cedric Vasseur or whatever his name is? I can't think of his name. The chap that's in charge of Alpha, I think it's Vasseur or something like that. He obviously wants to assess based on results.
Yeah.
In fairness, in the races, Gio's not producing the results, so I just can't see him being retained. I'd be surprised if Gio is retained in that seat for next year. Now they keep on touting Gang Zhao, the Chinese driver in Formula 2, because they're now saying,
the money he'd bring.
They're saying 30 million now.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was reading an article just this evening by Mr. Vasseur, and he was asked about what's his name, Zhao from Formula 2, and prompted with the, £30 million is a lot of money.
I wouldn't say that.
What can you say about this? Interestingly, he turned around and said that is complete and utter speculation, and I call that value of money that he can bring to a team absolute bullshit. And that was his direct words. That was what he was quoted. It's bullshit.
I mean, I like that. Don't mince your words.
Yeah. And
the only thing that's got me about Guan Yu Zhou going over to the team is my understanding was he was a Renault development driver and in the Renault scheme. Yes. And as we know, Alpha is a Ferrari junior team with the Ferrari engine. So I'd always assumed Eilert, Schwartzman, they were more likely to get that drive. Now, I've just done a quick Google to say who's still in the running for this seat.
Yeah.
And what they seem to suggest is Robert Dornbos is a possible. Guan Yu Zhou,
Robert,
obviously we know.
Sorry, Robert Dornbos.
Yeah. Yep. Interesting, I know.
Where the fuck has he come from to suddenly be?
Know.
He's been out of, how long has he been out of F1?
Oh mate, I couldn't even tell you. A long old while.
He last raced in F1. I am pretty sure. Because he raced for Minardi. I know he raced for Minardi in 2005. And then he had some sporadic outings, didn't he, for the Red Bull proper team?
He hasn't raced in Formula 1 since 2006.
Is that when they kept on swapping him and Chris Klein in the bloody Red Bull?
Oh. Which is now making me think I might not trust this article too much. But, so what they're saying is Dornbos is an outside, Guan Yu Zhou, Giovinazzi, obviously, Alex Albon, which we know is not going to happen.
That's not going to
happen. This could be an old article. The other candidate they mention, which I wouldn't have expected, but is an outside shout, is Nick de Vries. Yeah, and the reason I think that is I think he was more likely to go to Williams. I still think what we're expecting here is a Ferrari junior driver. It's clearly not going to be Ilott.
No, he's signed his deal, so we know where he is.
So that makes it Schwartzman, or is it David Beckman? Was he the other one?
Yeah, David. But then David Beckman's had funding issues this season as well. So Beckman is currently 13th in the driver standings. Because he's missed some races due to not having any money. And the Ferrari Academy, notoriously, does not pay for your race seat. So although you're part of the Ferrari Academy, they do not cover your racing expenses. Okay. Which is obviously explained why Jean Alesi had to fund his son's racing career
by selling his Ferrari F40.
Yeah. Now, you see, there's another driver that I would like to see considered, and that is Oscar Piastri, obviously the guy that's actually currently leading the Formula 2 championship. Because I'm a big thing of, because obviously if he wins the Formula 2, if he does win it, if he is the champion, the rules stipulate that you cannot then compete any further in Formula 2 because you've done that. You're the champion. So why do you need to do another season of Formula 2? I get it. But then it's kind of like, where does he go? Because obviously, whilst all this is going on and you're fighting for the last seat on the F1 grid, which you're not part of their driver academy, IndyCar are currently obviously already sorting out their drivers. What the fuck do you end up doing for a year? Do you go and do Formula E? Ugh.
Some have done it, or go over to Japan and do some Super GT or DTM or something different.
That's just fucking no. It shouldn't be like that. If you're the champion of Formula 2, you should be getting the fucking nod, really, over these other fucking chumps.
But there has to be a seat available. There's more Formula 2 cars, I believe. There's more Formula 2 cars than there are Formula 1 cars.
Yeah, of course.
And we know people like Lewis aren't going anywhere, and Max and what have you.
Yeah.
But also, don't forget, there's the older brigade that are still knocking on the door for a seat. We've seen Kubica come back. No one had expected that. So I'm just reading another article.
I know that
lists another name.
Yeah.
Now, I'm all for promoting from within. I'm all for giving youth a chance. Equally, I'd love to see this guy back in a car and have an opportunity.
Nico Hülkenberg. You see, now there was an interesting article on him because apparently Gunther Steiner, this is one of Gunther Steiner's amazing fucking ideas that he's come up with. So he's come out with and said, yep, we want continuity. That's why we've stuck with Nikita and Mick. Okay. All right, Gunther. But then he turns around and he goes, but I'm really lacking an experienced hand to really develop the car. Okay.
Yeah. You can't have both.
You're not helping yourself right now. So Gunther's come up with this genius plan. So his proposition, I don't know what world Gunther lives in, but it's fucking brilliant, and I want to be part of that world. He's proposed to Gene Haas that they come up with a new way to operate their driving styles. So he wants an experienced driver as the reserve driver.
Okay.
The two drivers on the list, on the shortlist so far, is Kevin Magnussen to come back as a reserve, and Nico Hülkenberg. Now, what he's proposed is that at every track on the Friday for the practice session, that one of Mick or Nikita will have to take it in turns at each track to give up their Friday practice session to put the experienced driver in the car to give him basically the time to assess the car. And then it says it then allows me to directly compare Mick and Nikita to an experienced driver as well in terms of their lap times. I'm like, okay, I see some logic and some semblance behind this plan. Would it not just make more sense to put an experienced driver behind the fucking wheel full time?
Yes.
You know, let's just change the contracts. Let's send Mick to Alpha. Let's just move him to there. Put Nico Hulkenberg in the Haas. And
I would prefer that. I think that would be a much better direction for Mick.
Yeah, that's what I would prefer, because I think I think, do you know what? I know Bottas has been all over the fucking shop, but I believe that Bottas would actually be a very good mentor to a new driver. I think, just with how calm he is all the time, I think Bottas would be a good mentor. Not necessarily a team leader, but a mentor.
I'm not sure because of the deep Finnishness within him. I think he just might be a bit reserved and introverted, and not necessarily there.
I don't see Bottas as a Kimi. Bottas is.
No
do you know what?
Kimi was his own.
Yeah, Kimi's his own fucking entity, his own species. Like, yes. I'm so glad the world is blessed with the spawn of Kimi. I think that's going to be fucking amazing. Like, can you imagine when they come through? That's going to be amazing. But yeah, Bottas sometimes though is too soft for his own good. But yeah, so that's the only seat really, because obviously Williams is Alex Albon and Nicholas Latifi. So Latifi continues on,
which did surprise me. I didn't see Albon in the running for the Williams seat.
It's so left field. And then what's his name? Christian Horner's then come out and said, "Oh, but we've retained rights on him for 2023."
I would like my cake, and I'd like to eat it too.
Yeah,
please.
Exactly. So what are you saying then, Christian? You're saying that you're gonna retain Perez for next year, turf him out, and depending on how Alex Albon does, bring him back into the fucking fold? No. And if I was Alex Albon, I'd be very fucking wary of that, because look how Red Bull messed around Danny Kvyat. He was gone. He was back. He was gone. He was back. You know. It's just a Red Bull thing, isn't it? It's just Red Bull all over.
Seems to be. Seems to be. I mean, going back to what we were saying, I don't think I would advocate or be keen to see Kevin Magnussen back.
No.
I think that would be the wrong choice. Equally, I think bringing Romain Grosjean back would be the wrong choice.
Yeah.
Because I think having your existing Haas drivers who you've given your faith and put your faith in to drive the car, seeing last year's drivers back as the test driver, potentially usurping you, feels wrong. Someone from outside the team who hasn't been there before, with a wealth of experience, like a Hulkenberg, like a Robert Kubica, I could kind of see that. And I think if you are putting your faith in these young drivers to go forwards and deliver the goods for you, but you need that expertise, seems a sensible way around it.
Yeah, I think that I see what he's thinking. Obviously, I think what you may then get problems with is Nikita's dad being like, well, I've paid for my son to race, so why should he have to give up his seat for the X amount of times? I think there'd be some conflicts there. And then would you then possibly have Ferrari getting on your case saying, well, Mick's our youth driver, we need him to develop to really see if he's going to be worth a shot in the the big team. And then you're taking away seat time from him. How is that helping him develop? It's an interesting dilemma for teams, because obviously we're so restricted on seat time for drivers in the course of a season outside of Grand Prix, that your reserve drivers, or test drivers as they used to be known, don't really do a lot. Like, they just mainly sit in a simulator, which obviously is nothing like the real thing, really, when you boil it down.
No, it's not. And this is why drivers have been so keen to go and do things like the Pirelli tyre testing and what have you. And, I do understand the limits on it. Part of it is obviously cost, and part of it is fairness across the board. Because if you're Haas and you can only afford 2 tracks per season to do anything, or you're Ferrari and you can be out on your own test track that you've already built every day.
Yeah.
There is a lack of parity between the two. But I think banning all testing together feels wrong. Even if it was just you may have one testing session per month during the racing season or something.
Yeah, something like that would be quite good. You know, it's a shame because obviously, you know, like I said as well, like fans used to be able to go along to the testing. Like, you know, for cheap as chips, if you couldn't afford to go to a Grand Prix race weekend, for what, 20 quid, you get in and go and watch the guys test all day. And, you know, okay, it's not racing, it's not particularly massively exciting, but you're still getting to watch your heroes in Formula One machinery going around the racetrack.
And not that it's as important now in the turbo hybrid era, but certainly in the V8, V10, and V12 era, you could listen to them because it was a treat for the ears hearing an F1 car screaming its tits off down the Hangar Straight at Silverstone.
Yeah, and that's a sound that will forever be missed. You know, still stand by that. Obviously, we're at Sochi now, which is, you know, probably the last time this track is on the calendar, I would say, because we're going to that other one.
St. Petersburg, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, somewhere around there. Igora Drive, something like that. A new track. It looks okay. No, nothing really standing out about it for me, I'll be honest. It's just it's another Tilcadrome.
Yeah, I mean, it's a street track, isn't it?
No, I think this is a purpose-built facility, this one. Igora.
Oh, really?
Igora Drive, yeah.
Set to move to Sochi to Igora Drive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, look, I mean, looking at the pictures, it looks like it's being purpose-built.
Yeah. See, apparently it's got some incredible elevation changes, though, throughout the lap, which elevation changes do make some interesting things, especially if it affects the camber of some corners. But yeah, they're adding on.
I'm just looking at one of the pictures actually, and you can see some fairly pronounced elevation changes on a Google Maps image of the circuit.
Yeah, so I mean, what I feel again, it's another frustrating weekend for me personally for Russia because we're treading that line with the wet weather again, and yet again we had practice sessions delayed, cancelled because it's raining and all this kind of stuff. And I get we have a line between what's acceptable, what's not. But the track is never going to get any better if there's no cars out on fucking track. That you can send the safety car around all you want, but the safety car has different compounds of tyres on. It's a road car. It doesn't distribute the water away from the track at the same rate as a, you know, purebred wet weather tyre. I think we're getting close to being in that horrible situation. You remember like the American racing went where they just wouldn't race in the rain? Yeah. No, that's it. You just, no. If it rains, no race. We're treading a fine line into that now because you get the team, the drivers going, oh, it's too wet out here. And it's like, yeah, it's because it's raining. Yeah, it happens. I mean, you know, I remember some of the best races we had was in absolutely fucking torrential rain. Some of the real crackers, you know. And that was in an era where F1 was less safe and we still went racing.
Yeah.
You know, we still put the cars out there. We had some great races. You know, we had some surprising like orders. You know, I still remember fucking Jos Verstappen of all people being at the sharp end in an orange arrows in torrential monsoon at Malaysia. You know, and a Jarno Trulli wildly spinning off the racetrack in the Jordan at the hairpin.
It mixes things up. It's always equalised the field. Yeah, Formula One has never had a lineup where every car was capable of winning. It's just never been that way because the amount of developments that's gone into the car or what have you. So it's always, the rain has always been the great equaliser.
Yeah, and I think we miss out on some of it because they wait until the track is got barely any water left on it anyway when they do send them back out.
And then they go out on inters rather than
they go out on inters. And I'm like, well, you've got a fucking full wet compound there. Why have we not gone out on track sooner? Like, what's going on? But you know, like today, it was delay. Teams went out there straight away on intermediates. Okay, so what about the wet compounder tyre that's just been sat in the fucking garage? And could we not have sent them out sooner? You know, got the session underway. Obviously, it's an interesting one to see how this is going to play out, because obviously Verstappen and Leclerc are both starting on the back row because they've had new engines.
Yeah.
Because Honda have brought their what's rumored to be their final major upgrade to the engine. These are improvements that were meant to come next year for 2022. However, they've brought them forwards to assist Red Bull in their title challenge. So Verstappen's gone with the new engine. Leclerc's gone with the new engine. Interestingly, Sainz hasn't. He stayed with the old spec engine in the other Ferrari.
Yep.
And I think Perez has got the old spec engine in his Red Bull as well. I think he's just going to wait for his natural engine change to move to the new spec.
Yeah.
So I've had a look at the weather forecast, and lo and behold, the rain for tomorrow is now forecast to be pure sunshine.
Yeah.
So
it'll be a dry race.
Yeah. Now, the one I feel for in all of this is Mr. George Russell, who's put in a stunning wet performance to basically plant his Williams third on the grid, as he always does, only for the race to now be fucking dry.
Yeah.
My heart breaks for him. Absolutely breaks for him. But
I mean, the difficulty for me is you've got to predict what the start's going to be like. And anyone can get a great start or bog down, wheel spin, etc. In my heart, I can see Lewis getting the jump on George, and I can see Danny Rick getting the jump on George. But equally, I can see George holding up Fernando Alonso for a good 12 laps.
Oh, okay. Fuck it up. Well, guys, just remember, when we come back after this race, you fucking when it isn't 12 laps, you blame him for losing your money at the fucking betting shop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the problem with George, he doesn't usually have the best of starts off the grid.
No, not necessarily.
No. He is the driver that has lost the most amount of places on the opening laps in Grand Prix. That is usually because he qualifies the car in such a high position. The car on race pace is a different animal when it's loaded up with a full tank, and it's like, oh, off you go, mate. Yeah. I love that Lando's on pole, though. Lando and Sainz on the front row. I mean, you couldn't make it up. The bros, the two lads, like amazing. And just how exhilarated Lando was on the radio as well at the end of the session when they were like, yeah, that's P1, mate. That's pole. Just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I kind of felt like, though, there's a few experienced hands that didn't perform as well as I thought they would in that session. You know, with all the experience, Seb Vettel missing out on Q3 again, where Lance has made it through. You know, he's scraped through. You mentioned Lance, obviously, did have a shot at pole position at one point, which is fucking terrifying thought.
It's always what happens in changeable conditions. I think, in Q2, it was George that dived into the pits and put on his last and only remaining set of fresh intermediates, which lots of people will have been thinking, well, no, I'll need these for the next session. Well, yeah, absolutely. But if George Russell gets through to that session using those inters and pushes you out and you don't get to race at all, then you're knackered. So, it was a clever call by George, and it paid off. And equally, when we got to that final qualifying session, it was so clear the dry line was appearing.
Yeah, you could see
George made that jump, and did a great job. And then, of course, I'm going to have to talk about Lewis, aren't we?
Do you know what? That is his worst qualifying session I have seen. How he made contact with the barrier twice, didn't he?
Well, he did, but so what got me was Lewis came into the pits to change for the slicks in reaction to George and seeing the times that he was doing. When he came into the pits, George had completed one lap, but Lewis was still pole. Lewis was still quicker on the inters than George was in his first flyer in the wet. And then he just lost the back end.
Yeah.
And banged it against the wall. I thought he was going to get away with it. I saw them take the front wing off, and as they lifted it away from the car,
flopped.
it just flapped.
Yeah.
Like, right, okay, that was done. And then all of a sudden, they were pushing him out the way. I was like, what the fuck? But of course, Valtteri was coming in. And they wanted to get him out as quickly as possible. Then I'm sure I saw them push Lewis into the garage, into his box, presumably because they wanted to check the track rod ends and make sure he hadn't, put any serious suspension damage into the car. And then, of course, coming back out, I don't think he had enough laps to get those tyres up to temperature.
And he had to keep on, and he had to keep on hopping out the way, didn't he, for him? So you're taking your dry tyres onto the damper parts of the track. Yeah, and he went slower. And not surprised, to be honest. I'm really not surprised.
Me either.
But the way, I've got to say, the way George handled it, though, because he was slipping and sliding all over the fucking place that first lap and a bit. But he handled it and he persevered with it and got the rewards for it. I think the Williams crew was celebrating about as much as Lando Norris's crew were for bloody pole position. That Williams are going to miss him. They are going to miss him when he's gone.
Oh, hugely.
He's going to leave a massive void because him and Latifi work well together as a pair. There's none of that sort of horrid. There's none of that Nikita Mazepin, Mick Schumacher atmosphere between them two. They're just professionals going about their job, and it was very clear that they were there to try and turn Williams' fortunes around. Both of them, they were both 100% in it, focused on what they're going to do. And the team has kind of rallied around those two drivers, and they're doing wonders. And with Seidel, whatever his name is, and Zach Brown at the helm. That little package has been working little wonders at the moment, and I just worry. I just worry whether Albon is the right person to be filling that slot.
So I like Alex Albon.
I like Alex, yeah.
I think he deserved more of an opportunity at Red Bull and more support from them. He showed some great stuff early last season.
Some of the overtakes he done was brilliant. Yeah. Because they were showing one of his overtakes in the highlights here of last year when he was playing catch up and he come hammering up behind Giovinazzi in the second DRS thing where it kind of curves left and then you go into that sharp right under the bridge and round. And Albon went right round the fucking outside of Giovinazzi in that corner. And I was like, the guy can fucking overtake because he done it round the outside at Mugello turn 1 as well. Let's not forget, The guy can overtake.
He can, but he's sort of in the same way we talk about team leaders.
He's not a team leader.
He's not necessarily a team leader. He's a young pup.
Yeah, I don't think he's got the experience to be a team leader. I think it.
Well, Nick Latifi has more seasons under his belt than Alex Albon.
Yeah, he does. So I mean, in a sense, the continuity for Williams is Nicholas Latifi. It is Latifi. The worrying moment for me will come for Albon whether he goes into that team and then he doesn't outperform Latifi.
Exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
If he's on
it's a concern.
Yeah, if he's on a plateau or if he's below Latifi, I think that's his F1 career done.
Yeah.
I don't see it recovering from that. And I mean, he's already proven he can win races in GT cars. Maybe that's his future.
Quite possibly.
Yeah.
There is something else I want to touch on, though. And it was you who pointed this out to me. So I missed the end of the first qualifying session because I was too busy dealing with my children.
We're going to talk about Nikita again, are we?
Yes, we are. Because I've got some very specific numbers and stats in front of me that I wish to share with you and the viewers.
Yes, so, do it.
Let's just have a quick look through. We'll just pick some names at random. This is all Q1. Forget Q2,
Q1.
Q3.
All right.
So, Lando, who ultimately put the car on pole at the end, he was a 147.2 in Q1.
Okay.
Lewis, who topped that session, was a 145.9, really ringing everything out of the car. Other people around, so we've got Seb Vettel put in a 147.2.
Yeah.
Charles Leclerc did a 148.4. He was 15th. And then we start getting down to the meat. So Mick Schumacher in the Haas did a 149.8. He was 17th. Of course, last 20th was Max, who didn't set a time.
Yeah.
18th was Antonio Giovinazzi, who we know had a shocker with a 151 flat. 19th, Nikita Mazepin, 1 minute 53.764.
Shocking.
He was 4 seconds slower, basically, than his teammate. Now, what gets me, because we also had this discussion earlier today about the 107% rule.
Oh, yes.
So, Nikita Mazepin put in the time of 153.764. The 107% time was 153.4. So he was slower than the 107% time.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, we had to do some digging to check this out. So the 107% rule was live from 96 to 2002 and was then abandoned, and then came back in 2011 and is still active, but does not apply to wet qualifying sessions. If it is a wet qualifying session, the 107% rule is abandoned.
Which is essentially what saved him here.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Although, and I think the caveat to that is, I'm looking here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 23 drivers since 2012 have fallen foul of the 107% rule and have been allowed to start the race because their pace proven over the race weekending practices was quick enough. The last one of those was Lance Stroll this year at the French Grand Prix.
Wow.
But equally, people in there, I mean, there's names in there that we would expect. People like Rio Haryanto.
Oh, yeah, Manor. Yeah.
Julian Palmer. Some of those guys. But equally, Sergio Perez, Max Verstappen, Danny Ricciardo. There's a whole load of people at the Hungarian Grand Prix that fell foul of this 2016. Carlos Sainz at the Texas Grand Prix in the Toro Rosso. There's a few. But the last drivers to actually not be, I'm actually saying that, since 2011, 4 drivers have not been allowed to race because of falling foul of the 107% rule. I won't ask you to guess because we'd be here all night.
Narain Karthikeyan, Pedro De La Rosa.
Yes, there's 2.
Okay.
Actually, well, no, there's 3 because Narain Karthikeyan was twice fell foul of it.
Was he?
So you got 1 more to go.
I want to say someone like Lucas Di Grassi or something like that.
Not in the list, I'm afraid.
No. I'm trying to think who else drove that shit wagon.
Otherwise known as the HRT.
Yeah.
The hormone replacement therapy car.
Fuck. Fuck's sake. Yes, that one. Fucking hell. Who
do you want hints?
I know Clean drove that car. He was quite quick in that car. Oh, there was someone else who drove that car that year. Danny Ricciardo?
No.
Because he drove that shit heap. Go on then. Give me a hint. What hint can I have?
So I'll give you a couple of gentle hints. So the year is 2011. The Grand Prix is the Australian Grand Prix. This Italian driver was quicker than Narain Karthikeyan, yet still fell foul. Sorry?
Liuzzi. Fitzantonio Liuzzi.
Fitzantonio Liuzzi.
Yes.
So those are I say 4 drivers. It's 3 because it happened twice to Narain. So Narain Karthikeyan twice, Pedro De La Rosa and Liuzzi are the only drivers who have not been allowed to start a race since 2011, having fallen foul of the 107% rule. There was many more before that, going back. A lot of Minardis, I'm afraid, in here.
Oh, I know,
U40s mentioned.
Yeah, Pacifics. LaRousse.
No Pacifics.
Oh, no, because Lotus went bust, didn't they, and saved them, basically, yeah.
Well, Pacific was 94, 95, and the 107% rule came into play in 96.
Bastards.
Ooh.
MasterCard Lola as well, let's not forget them.
But again, that's earlier.
No, MasterCard Lola was 97.
Really?
They turned up at Australia with 14 seconds off the pace.
No, you're right. Yes, Australian Grand Prix, Lola.
With Riccardo Rosset and Vincenzo Sospiri. Oh.
Yeah.
Such names. Such legends.
There must have been a rule before this as well, I'm sure. Like maybe it was 110% rule or something. I don't know. I've always known it as the 107. But I'm sure there was something before 96 that would have stopped people.
Yeah, they had like pre-qualifying and stuff like that to get rid of a lot of the weaklings, you know. Yeah, it's an interesting thing that F1's had over the years. Obviously, we haven't done a driver rating thing in quite some time. We've only really got Monza to do a rating on, because I'm not going to do Zandvoort, because why should I?
Too far out of memory,
yeah.
frankly.
So I'm going to bring that on here, and I've kind of blocked out your face now. Oh, well.
Oh, for the best, mate.
Oh, well, there we go. So, have you got the finishing order? Well, actually, we'll just go through the drivers for as best we can remember, to be honest.
So I do have the finishing order. I mean, obviously, there's certain things I'll remember and certain things I won't. But...
No, of course. So, obviously, we had... Lewis Hamilton's the first driver on my list.
How are we classifying again?
Well, so we've got insane drive, good drive, average, underperformance, or rubbish.
Lewis, I think, goes down as an average. It was a very average weekend for him.
Yes.
I think he could have gone on to score some solid points. So I wouldn't put him down as underperforming, but average.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Okay, so let's go to Valtteri Bottas. We'll do it team by team. So Bottas, who finished P3 in the end from 19th on the grid. Obviously, two of those positions were courtesy of specific people.
Was he 19th on the grid?
He was.
Did he have a penalty?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to say third place is an average, but if he's come from basically last on the grid, you'd have to put that down as a good drive.
Yeah, I think it's
to get
a good
on the podium.
Drive. Yeah, because he's had to get past the other Red Bull with Perez, the Ferraris. Yeah, it's good drive from Bottas. Well done.
Well, but he didn't get past the other Red Bull with Perez, though, did he? Because he would have finished behind Perez on the road, and Perez falls beneath him because of the penalty.
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, whatever.
Fourth place.
Yeah. So Max Verstappen. Then let's talk about Max. Where are we placing him based on his
full on underperformance? On underperformance. It wasn't a good weekend for him. It's never going to be a great weekend for the car because I don't think it's a power track car. We always said that.
Yes.
But he made some daft mistakes. The team made some terrible mistakes in the pit stop and decisions elsewhere. But yeah, full on underperformance.
Yeah, and Perez teammate?
I'd call that poor rather than underperformance. Well, hang on, how are we classifying it?
Well, you got average, underperformance, or rubbish.
Okay, so sorry, I want to make Max rubbish, and I want Sergio as an underperformance. So Sergio did a better job than Max, I think is what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay, yeah. All right, so we'll move away from the top two teams. We'll go to our McLaren boys. Lando Norris.
Oh, abysmal.
Trash driver.
Yeah, absolutely trash. Lando and Danny, I don't know what the hell they were playing.
No, yeah.
Come on. What are we going to say? They were outstanding.
They're outstanding, yeah. Both of them up there. Danny Rick, I think, the king there. Because he also had fastest lap as well, let's not forget.
Yeah. On the last lap of the race as well, on the old tyres.
Yeah, he only took it by 0.13 of a... No, 0.15 of a second. That's all he... 0.015 of a second, sorry. Fucking hell. Ferrari, we had Leclerc in 4th and Sainz in 6th in the end.
So I'm slightly torn here. My mindset is based on Ferrari's current performance and levels. both of those would go down as a good performance. Because it's in front of the Tifosi at their home race, I suspect they would consider it an underperformance. But if I'm being realistic, based on the actual performance data of that car, I think they were both good drives.
Good. Yeah. Okay. So I'll go with the next highest team in terms of finishing position. That's going to be Lance Stroll for Aston Martin. P7 for him.
Yeah, it's a decent performance for Lance.
Yeah, for him, yeah.
I'd consider that good.
Yeah. A surprising turn up for him, to be honest, because I didn't really expect it from him. Obviously, teammate Seb was P12 in the end.
Yeah,
but he had car trouble though, didn't he? So
he does. Yeah, I mean, I'd yin and yang a little bit here between an average or a slight underperformance. I think he could have done better.
He probably could have done better because he did only qualify 11th as well. Let's not forget that. So he didn't make the cut to Q3. Probably underperformance. For me, an underperformance anyway. Okay, next on the list, Fernando Alonso, P8.
Fairly average, I would have said.
Yeah. And Esteban Ocon was P10, so they both scored points.
Yeah, again, that feels like an average drive. The Renault engine's not known for being the most powerful on the grid, so again, it might not be in the track for them, but fairly average considering recent performances.
Yeah, obviously the last of the point scorers was Mr. George Russell in the Williams.
Yeah, so actually, I'm going to score both the Williams in one. I think they're both good. I think George did a better job, but I think Latifi bringing that home in 11th in front of an Aston, both the Alphas, etc. Yeah, that was a decent job.
Yeah, he kept him at bay.
Yeah.
Again, it's just a steady performance from Latifi. He is consistent. He's not spectacular in any shape or form. He's
so
just
interestingly,
consistent.
And if he's still listening, because we're like 2.5 hours in. Hi, Fergie. Fergie has challenged me a few times on my thoughts on Nicholas Latifi, and since he has started challenging me, I have noticed that his performances have got better.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's in direct reaction to George. I don't know if the car is just getting better and he's getting more comfortable in it. He's still not as good as George Russell, and I still don't see him as a team leader, but he's definitely improving.
Yeah. Or maybe the catalyst for his improved performances is he's heard your views on him.
Maybe that's what it is.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yep.
Okay.
Welcome, Nick.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. So the next team on the list is going to be the Alfa Romeos. So Gio in 13th and Kubica in 14th.
So I'm going to be slightly controversial here.
Oh.
Antonio Giovinazzi, average, 13th place. I mean, bearing in mind there was 5 retirements, it's there or thereabouts what I'd expect from an Alpha. I expect them to be the team above Haas battling with Williams, so average. Robert Kubica, good.
Yeah, I think he's handled himself well.
Yeah, the fact that man can jump into a car with little or no experience of the car and being out of Formula One for such a long time with the injuries he's got, fair play to him.
Yeah. For the sake of the thing, we're going to have to use Kimi Raikkonen's picture, but for today, that's Robert Kubica.
We'll know.
Yeah, so the next classified finisher was Mick Schumacher, last of the classified finishers, in P15. Yeah, he got dicked by his fucking teammate, which didn't help his cause.
He did. I mean, he might have pushed Robert a little bit more and taken him to the sword if he hadn't have had those incidents. But it's about where I expect a Haas to finish.
But then when you look at the lap times, so the fastest lap time of the Alphas was Gio with a 1:25.7 and Kubica did a 1:25.8. The closest Mick got was a 1:26.7. It's a full second off the pace of that Alpha.
You thinking it's a poor performance in comparison?
No, I'm just saying I don't. To be honest, even with Nikita punting him, I don't think he would have held on to the back of those Alphas.
No, maybe not. Maybe not.
Obviously, Nikita was the first retiree. I'm going to say it's another rubbish drive by Nikita, to be honest.
I agree. I think retiring or not, the damage that he caused by being a dick to Mick Schumacher.
Yeah.
Poor performance.
Yeah. It leaves us with the AlphaTauri boys, who had an absolutely disastrous race in essentially their team's home Grand Prix.
Yeah, and of course, was it last year that Gasly won?
Yeah. So obviously, Tsunoda binned it lap 1.
Did Tsunoda actually start?
Sure, he started. It said he started from 15th on the grid. It says Gasly started from the pit lane.
So interestingly, you and I might be looking at different things here. So I'm reminding myself of the race classification from Wikipedia, and I have a note here that's saying Yuki Tsunoda did not start the race. His place on the grid was left vacant.
What happened with him?
Don't know. The listing here says brakes, an issue with his brakes.
Ah, okay. Well, if he didn't start, can't really fucking judge him then, to be honest.
Well, so here's the awkwardness. Because Pierre and Yuki, Pierre Gasly did 3 laps.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Oh, actually, in fairness, no. I'm going to change my mind. I was going to say they were both average, and I would say the team was the underperformance. But actually, no. Pierre had a really difficult weekend because he went off at Curva Grande in the sprint race.
The sprint race fucked him, didn't it? Yeah.
It did. Yeah. Yes, I remember now. So I'm going to say Yuki was average. Pierre Gasly was poor. It was a poor weekend from him.
Yeah, to be honest though, the Curva Grande thing, I didn't really expect that. It's from obviously the contact he made in the first part, where he bumped the back of the car, didn't he? Whoever it was, and that was completely his own doing. He just went in too hot.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think the damage he's then done to the car after that is what's fucked him for the proper race.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that they've managed to repair the car properly, have they? Because he's only managed.
Which is something we need to consider as a risk for Lewis tomorrow.
Well, see, my thing is, obviously, he's gone back out after banging the wall with such a clout. So obviously that's the driver's ratings anyway. So we'll minimise that and get rid of that. Let us know in the comments if you agree or disagree. Please note that I've just noticed that the template is by Jeff. So if it's as good as Jeff's pit strategies in F1 2021, then it's a load of shit. The thing is, obviously, we've now got a dry race forecast for tomorrow, which is a complete change from what we were expecting, because obviously we were expecting the rain to continue, which means the cars will be travelling at a slower pace, not using the curbs. Now that it's dry, the car is in parc ferme right now. That's where his Mercedes is. If there is any sort of subliminal or underlying suspension damage to that car, with it being dry, the drivers are going to go back to clouting curbs and all that kind of stuff. We do potentially see the risk of a suspension failure on that Mercedes.
It's a possibility.
It's happened before. It has happened to drivers before, when they've done it. Let's look at Charles Leclerc when he had stuck it on pole for Monaco, binned it, and they'd done some checks on one side of the car and gone, fine, we'll replace all those parts. But really, it was other parts as well that were affected that then failed and let him down. We could see, like you're saying, it is a risk. We could see it happen for Hamilton, where he has issues in the race, where the damage starts to come through to the forefront, and we end up with him saying, I'm going to have to bring it in because shit,
Only time will tell.
Only time will tell. Yeah, absolutely. Because obviously the grid then for tomorrow is, if we go through the qualifying order. So your grid for tomorrow, guys, as a last part of this. Lando Norris obviously on pole with Carlos Sainz in second. Russell, Hamilton, second row. Ricardo Alonso, 5th and 6th. Bottas and Stroll, 7th and 8th. Perez and Ocon, 9th and 10th. Vettel and Gasly, 11th and 12th. Tsunoda, 13th. Latifi, 14th. Then we've got Leclerc and Raikkonen, although Leclerc will now be starting at the back in 19th. So it's going to be Raikkonen and Mick Schumacher. Antonio Giovinazzi and Nikita Mazepin. And then we've got Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen forming the last row of that grid. I would be interested to see how Leclerc and Verstappen deal with getting past the rolling blockade of Mazepin and Giovinazzi off the start. I've seen how Giovinazzi handles opening laps, and it doesn't go particularly well. So
doesn't. But you never know. They might start Max in the pit lane, give them a greater opportunity, and then let them pick up the pieces when Mazepin and Giovinazzi take each other out.
They might try and do a Liuzzi, launch it down the inside at turn 1 and just skittle everyone in front. And then we end up with Nicholas Latifi winning the race.
Oh, God.
Proving his world champion credentials. No. It's going to be an interesting race tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, we get a good race. We've not really had any particularly outright exciting races at Sochi, so hopefully this one changes things up a little bit. But yeah, we'll see. It totally depends what the weather actually ends up doing as to what happens. I just hope Russell can hold on for something. I want him to get something from this race.
He'll get points. It's just how many points he gets.
Yeah. Because I think he's got enough nous about him to be able to haul that car up there. Because, Latifi is 14th, for Christ's sake. And he's usually a step ahead of Latifi by a little bit. So, yeah, maybe 9th or 10th place for George. Somewhere around there. I don't know. What's your predictions for the race win, though, tomorrow? That's the question. Oh.
It's a really tough one to answer.
It is a tough one to answer. I'm torn because I would love to say Lando Norris. I would love to say it, but
I think there's 3 drivers in the running for me.
Okay.
There's Lando.
Yep.
There's Lewis.
Yep.
And I wouldn't rule out a sneaky, amazing drive from Bottas. He's won here before.
Yes, he has.
He's got nothing to lose and nothing to race for. He's my wild card. In order, I think what's most likely is I think Lewis is likely to win. Lando is your second bet because I think he's going to be a tough cookie for Lewis to get past. And if Lewis can't get past him and he cooks his tyres, I think Lando will have it. And my wild card will be Valtteri.
Okay. Yeah, I think Sainz will go backwards. Sainz will probably be around 6th, somewhere around there. Yeah. It would be interesting to see. It would be interesting to see if your prophecy of Hamilton car woes comes to fruition.
Join us again next time and we'll find out.
Join us for the post-race rundown of Sochi, where we hopefully will have a lot to talk about. I'm hoping that it's not going to be a washout and we get some good racing. So, yeah. I don't think we have too much more to touch on. Obviously, if we've missed any talking points that you really want us to talk about, Fergie, we're looking at you. Make sure you drop something in that comment section below, because we're always happy to see other points of view and engage in that. So let's get involved in some discussion about where this is going for the second half of the season. I guess for me, yeah.
Well, so the last thing I just wanted to mention was so depending, of course, on where you are watching or listening to us, we are available on multiple platforms now. So if you are listening to us as an audio podcast, we are also available. If you want to see our ugly mugs, we are on a video podcast on YouTube under the name Pulsar Paddock. PulsarFire Paddock podcast. And if you are watching us on YouTube and you would prefer to listen to us as an audio podcast, and I've got to be honest, just listening is probably better than seeing this. We are now available on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, on Breaker, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public.
Wow. Well, there we go. Mr. Pulsar Man has been busy. Like I say, just tune in, find us if you want to drop stuff like suggestions. Probably the YouTube's comments section is probably the best place for that at the moment. Yeah. Whether or not we set something up in the future, depending on how it goes. That's probably going to be it for now. I think we're caught up enough guide us into this next part, which is the race. And hopefully, you know, we'll get some further announcements about this bloody Alfa Romeo seat.
It'd be nice.
Yeah, it would be nice. So, from me then, that is going to be a thank you very much for listening and tuning in. Take care, and I'll see you after a race somewhere soon. John, over to you.
And yeah, the same from me. Thanks everyone for tuning in and listening. I hope you enjoy the content, and we'll see you next time.
Guys, take care. Bye-bye.